across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening or good afternoon. We're kind of on the cusp between the two, but it's dark outside, so I'm going to go with evening. And who knows, you might have clocked off work a bit early. What with it being a Friday, you may already be on your way home. You might be at home. You might be cooking your dinner. You might be doing the Christmas shopping. I don't know. As long as you're here with me, that is what matters the most, because it is delightful to have your company. And there is a lot to get our teeth into together today, especially the big D word, democracy. It's a word that doesn't seem to be really liked by the left wing, does it now? Oh, they want to just hand over stuff to the EU without asking us, despite the fact we had a referendum on this. They want to cancel local elections again with their paltry excuses. But there you go. That is what we're going to be discussing alongside a lot of other things. I'm going to have a good old grouch about the people who are trying to de-Christianise Christmas. I'm sorry, but no one's making you celebrate Christmas, okay? You don't have to be a Christian to celebrate Christmas, but how dare anybody demand that we don't use the word Christmas, that we call it holidays instead, or, well, bit inconvenient having that old manger story knocking about in the background. Can we just focus on the presents? I'm sorry, no. It is Christmas, okay? It is the celebration, the feast of Christ, the anointed one. You don't get to scrub that bit, hijack it, pretend you invented it, and tell all of us who actually believe in the whole nativity thing to bog off. I'm sorry, no. And this is where the fight back begins. You don't have to go to church. Fine. If you don't believe in God, you don't believe in God. Go do what you ever want to do. Okay, fine. But how dare anybody out there turn around and suggest that it's all a little bit too Christian, this Christmas business. I will not have it. Right, we're going to be discussing that, and we are going to be discussing small boat crossings there through the roof again. And Miss Phillipson, almost my namesake, but not quite, Bridget Phillipson, who doubles up, as well as being the Education Secretary, as being the Secretary for Women and Equality. And, because she really cares about women's rights, she's decided to go back to the Supreme Court and say, that ruling where you said that biological sex is fundamental and that a woman is based upon I think you've got it wrong. It's not fair on trans people. I'm sorry, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? This has gone through multiple court cases, all the way up to the highest possible level. You're now supposed to be implementing that decision for the safety and the protection of women and girls, which is, in theory, one of the portfolios and responsibilities that you hold. But no, you're above the law. You're God. I forgot. Oh, let us all prostrate in front of your, shiny feet, Ms. Phillipson. Because everything stops with you, doesn't it? You know best. Blimmin' out, these people, they've got such an ego on them. Let's not have elections. Supreme Court got this wrong. F off. You can't do that. I'm sorry. We're also going to be discussing the latest coming out of America as we name the new ambassador to the US, Mr. Christian Turner. And we're going to be having a good old laugh and a joke about Donald Trump's kind of walk of shame. He's put all these various displays of the former US presidents, of little captions underneath. And, well, let's just say he hasn't been particularly polite or professional in terms of following protocol. He's kind of gone about things in his own inimitable way. OK, let's kick off then, first of all, with the cancellation of elections. And if any point you want to join the conversation, throw in your two-bit and let me know what you think about the stories we're discussing today, or anything else, quite frankly. It's Friday. Let's hang loose. 03444991000 is the number to dial. If you'd rather send a text message, it's 87222. If you're going to smuzz me in the good old-fashioned sense of the word, then you have to write the word talk before your message. You can also use the long number 03444991000 to give me a WhatsApp message or send me a voice note on WhatsApp. Sing me a little carol with a political theme. I don't mind. But let's have a bit of fun. It is a Friday afternoon stroke evening, and we've got to settle ourselves into the weekend. So let's welcome aboard HMS Common Sense, our very first shipmate, in the form of Councillor George Madgwick, who's the Reform leader of Portsmouth City Council. Good afternoon stroke evening, George. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you for asking. Now, understandably, Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of running scared of the voters as he paves the way to cancel even more elections across the country. Labour have invited 63 councils now to postpone next year's local elections, which by and large that is sort of the midterm test, isn't it? The litmus test to see what people think of Starmer's leadership and give the public the opportunity to boot out councillors that they don't think are serving their purpose anymore. And this means that more than 10 million people more than 10 million people have been denied the right to vote, have essentially been disenfranchised. And half of the councils that are now going to go way past their sell-by date happen to be, yes, you guessed it, run by Labour. Now, methinks if this was any other party, particularly, let's say, if this happened to be a Reform government cancelling elections, the screams of tyrannical regime, fascism, autocracy would be resonating through every single newsroom on the front page of every single newspaper. And yet somehow the audacity of the Labour Party, they just get away with it. What's your reaction to this story?
Yeah, I mean, what a month that Labour have had, right? You know, is this the month where they've proposed about cancelling jury trials and now cancelling the second year of elections in a row? Only yesterday we found out they're cancelling their lobby sessions for journalists in the afternoon. You know, this has all got the hallmarks of an authoritarian dictatorship government. And it's something I never expected to see from a Labour government, to be completely honest with you. But you are right. If this was happening on the other foot, if this was the Conservatives or Reform that were suggesting to cancel elections, there would be outrage. And I think the people need to realise at home, we've only ever had 4 elections cancelled in our entire living memory, which was obviously the war. We had the cancelled, obviously, for the war, and obviously we had cancelled for COVID, and then obviously last year, and then obviously potentially this year. You know, we don't cancel elections in this country. We run through them. And after the last World War, we had an election within 2 months. So this whole narrative of that the civil service isn't ready to hold elections and we've got to streamline things, in my opinion, just doesn't simply brush. In relation to councillors and then delaying elections, I'm a real firm believer that the councillors are elected for a 4-year term. They've got a democratic mandate for 4 years. One singular day past that 4 years and they lose their mandate, in my opinion, and the people are ready to vote.
It's the blatant hypocrisy of all of this as well. I'm surprised you say you didn't expect it from a Labour government, really? You hadn't been reading enough of the warning signals then. But, for example, the reason they're doing this, of course, is because dozens of councils are going to be abolished or merged with a push towards creating more unitary authorities. So, therefore, the way that elections are held, the constituencies, the borders, etc., will all change in time. And so, you know, the Labour Party might reason, well, it's easier and would save money if we just wait and do the elections when all of that process is finished and all the unitary authorities are established. And yet, I remember back in 2019 when we had expressly voted to leave the European Union, and people on the Labour benches, including the shadow Brexit secretary, who was that again? Oh, that's right. It was Sir Keir Starmer, wasn't it? I remember, because they refused to listen to the democratic mandate of the people and denied us our choice at the ballot box, we ended up having to have blimmin' elections, which then got people elected for all of about 6 months. I know, I was one of them. So what is the problem here? Why can't they do it again? This is latent hypocrisy on top of things like getting rid of the jury service, bringing in things that were never on the manifesto. Bridget Phillips telling the Supreme Court they've got it wrong on their ruling of biological sex. I'm afraid these people really do think that they're above any form of other authority, particularly the authority of the voter. They're taking the demos out of democracy.
Yeah, and they're running scared. That's what they're doing. They're running scared. And Nigel said yesterday it's becoming a banana republic, and it's right. If you remember, they cancelled elections last year for, what was it, 7 million people last year, under the excuse that we would have the mayoral elections this year and local government reorganisation. That's why they did it. And then obviously, so they cancelled last year's elections and moved them to this year, and now they cancelled the mayor elections for next year. And now they're saying about cancelling the elections again for the local government reorganisation. Is absolutely rubbish. What they're doing, and I'll tell you this, because I say I've sat on, it's very boring, Alex, but I've sat on this local government reorganisation board where we consult on this stuff for the last 18 months now. And let me make this clear. Currently, right at this very second, they are deciding how these new local governments are organised. The constitutions, the chief executive officers, all the key officers are being decided in the next 12 months. They do not want to lose control of that decision-making process, because on day one of the local government reorganisation starting, it will be governed, and officers and civil servants will be decided by whomever is in power from May next year. So it's a lot easier for them to delay elections and allow Labour to decide who the civil servants are going to be, who the key officers are going to be, how the constitutions are going to work, because then when reform do take over the following year, they're going to be taking over something that's been institutionally organised by a Labour government, which definitely do not have a mandate to run councils right this very second.
Well,
and it's scandalous.
I'm afraid that bureaucratisation of our democracy is very much cut from the same cloth when it comes to the way that Labour approach things. 30 quangos he established in the King's Speech when he first came to power. 30 quangos! 30 organisations run by his cronies that have no accountability to the general public, who actually make decisions that affect our lives on a daily basis. But there you go. Shall we have a listen from my own mouth? I'm going to read you what a spokesperson for East Sussex County Council has had to say about this. They have said, it is welcome that the government is listening to local leaders and has heard the case for focusing our resources on delivery in East Sussex, particularly with devolution and reorganisation of local government, as well as delivering services to residents as such high priorities. This is one reason we have argued for postponement of county council elections in May. Other strong arguments are the cost to the taxpayer of electing councillors for just 1 year before further elections in 2027 to prepare for unitary authorities. It would also be unfair to expect new councillors to serve such a truncated term. With this in mind, we still believe it would be more prudent for just one set of elections to be held in 2027, and we will repeat this request to government, though it is for ministers to make the final decision. Well, not up to the voter then, is it? Don't bother asking us what we want to do. We don't matter in this at all, do we?
I mean, that roughly translates into we're terrified and we think we know better than the voters. It actually holds the voters in contempt, because what they're saying in that statement is that we don't trust you to make a decision over who should run your authority. So we believe we are better than you and we will run it how we think we should run it. Honestly, that statement is appalling, absolutely appalling.
Don't worry, they'll set about restructuring the entire government come 2029 and no doubt find a way to cancel the general election if they could. Let us talk about, well, smash the gangs. They haven't really smashed any, have they? You know, stop the boat, smash the gangs, on we go. Small boat crossings have soared past 40,600 this year alone. Wednesday saw 497 migrants cross the Channel. Of course, it was a migration day yesterday of the UN. Today is Don't Do Hate Speech Day, by the way, if you want to keep note of the important UN calendar in the countdown to Christmas, lecturing us all. More than 1,000 people made the trip in small boats in less than a week, which of course brings the annual total to over 40,000. Completely undocumented random people have crossed the Channel by small boat. That we know of. That doesn't involve visa overstayers. People have come on aeroplanes and just, you know, happen to lose their passport when they get here. Doesn't involve people in the backs of lorries. The number of people breaking into this country is bound to be far higher. And yet, yesterday, the way that they framed this whole initiative on protecting the integrity, innocence and safety of women and girls was declaring it a national emergency. Now, if they really believed the words that came out of their own mouths, they would know that they could also declare crossing the Channel in small boats a national emergency. They have everything given to them in order to do this. They know that among those people in small boats would be terrorists. They know that the people traffickers are funding organisations such as the Wagner mercenaries, Hamas, the IRGC, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all of our best mates around the world, they know as well the economic strain this puts on the nation, and they can see the fraying social fabric that is happening as a result of not dealing with this, as well as, of course, the daily news reports of attacks, particularly against young girls from these men who are from misogynistic cultures. And so they could do something about this. The fact of the matter is they don't want to. Would you agree?
Yeah, don't get me even started on Hamas. Portsmouth City Council's Lib Dem administration just agreed to twin with Palestine last week, so that's great. And when I raised the concern about this and said that Hamas really needs to be considered, they said that's irrelevant. So don't even get me started.
Twin with Hold on. No, I like the sound of this. What does that mean? Twin with Palestine. What are they going to do? Go and, like, I don't know, do school exchanges with kids in Gaza?
This is the thing, though, Alex, right? Because they've twinned with an area called Bezet in Palestine, and they said about the cultural links and the university links. So this is a real big concern. I don't know what they're considering and whether they think that all of a sudden loads of our students in Portsmouth are going to pop off to Palestine for the weekend to do some education. I mean, it's terribly shocking. We raised some real big concerns over Hamas and the links to the university there has to Hamas, as they've elected a Hamas student bloc 4 years in a row now, and we were told that that was irrelevant to the decision-making process, and I don't understand how that is at all possible. So yeah, we're not very happy with that in Portsmouth right now. We tried to challenge it, but Lib Dems and Labour voted it through, and we are now formally starting a friendship agreement with a town in Palestine to show solidarity with the Palestinian people, in the words of our council.
I mean, I still argue there's no such thing as Palestine. I'm sorry, there isn't, but we apparently now recognise it as a country, so there you go. What a load of virtue signalling, performative nonsense. What a load of utter dreck. I'm going to find out where this Bizet place is. I'm going to have a little bit of a Google of that during the advert break and find out quite who lives there and quite what's going on there. Because I'll tell you one thing, at this glorious time of the year when we remember the birth of the Christ child, guess who can't go to Bethlehem? Oh, that's right, Christians. Why? Because ever since it's been under the control of the Palestinian authorities, all the Christians have been turfed out. It used to be 80% Christian in Bethlehem, and the whole local economy thrived because of pilgrimages and tourism. And then, because, well, the Palestinian authorities took over, the Christians were herded out, they were persecuted, they were badly treated. Now it's being run by Muslims, and no one goes on pilgrimage there because it's too dangerous, and the local economy has collapsed. So there you go. When people want to think about Palestine and twin with Palestine, perhaps one of the first things Portsmouth might do is say, hey, how about, given that's the birthplace of Jesus, you let Christians live there and go on pilgrimage there again? That might be progressive.
It would indeed, and they just simply do not care and don't listen. Remember, Portsmouth is the home of the Council of Sanctuary. We're the people that give discounts to kayak lessons via our leisure card, if you remember the story over the summer. You know, we're the council that have the largest amount of migrants here out of any other authority in the whole.
Is that right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've got a huge amount there, and they've actually dispersed them into HMOs and family accommodation. So we've had it in Portsmouth where, and this is factual on records, where they have evicted local people from their homes to make way for government contracts to put asylum seekers into the homes.
Hold on. George, you're just hitting me with all these things that I'm afraid I haven't been able to do my research and get my right of reply and be able to testify as to the veracity of what you're saying. But you're claiming that in Portsmouth, families have been evicted from their homes. Is this social housing?
No, it's private housing, and the council have had their right of reply because it's been on Peter Cardwell's show before. But yeah, yeah, it's factual. What they've done is the Home Office have used third-party contractor Clear Springs, who have then instructed landlords, who have then given Section 21 notices to remove local people from their homes and from HMOs, the most vulnerable people in our communities, and then issue government contracts for asylum seekers to stay in Portsmouth.
And what happened to these people? What happened to the people who were told they had to leave their residences?
Are you ready for this, Alex? They live in hotels.
I literally don't even know what to say. So hold on. What we're doing is taking the migrants out of the hotels and putting them in the houses, and the people who rightfully lived in those houses, who are the Brits, have been told to evacuate those houses to then be made to live in hotels instead.
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's ridiculous, not because it's
It's not
funny.
ridiculous, it's evil. It is wicked.
It's absolutely mind-blowingly crazy. I know a family personally because they approached me. This is where the story broke. They approached me, and the lady and her 2 kids ended up living in a hotel for 3 months because she had been removed from her accommodation through a Section 21 because they wanted to make way for a migrant accommodation. And that's been published nationwide, so it's a factual story. And you know, it's happened. As I say, we now have 700 in Portsmouth. We have more migrants living in Portsmouth that arrive here on boats than any other authority in the whole of Hampshire combined.
What's the plan of giving them the kayak lessons in the hope that they might find their way back in the other direction?
Oh, potentially. That was an exclusive on Kevin O'Sullivan's show. But yeah, they did something called the Leisure Card Facility, and they've offered now the Leisure Card to all asylum seekers that live in Portsmouth. It gives them discounts off coffees, off of free trips, going to local classes.
If they're having these discounts, how can they afford this stuff in the first place? I thought they only got like £9 a week pocket money.
I know, right? How can they afford this? And this is what's literally happening in our city. And to say, and now we're twinning with Palestine to show solidarity with the Palestinian people. But when we have a leader of a council that's literally standing on the steps with a sign saying no hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here, what do you expect? I mean, this is the issue we're having in Portsmouth right now. It's become really volatile. We've had protests all over the summer, and they're still continuing to this day at the local hotels and in front of the civic offices. And fingers crossed, this is why we need this election in May. I mean, Portsmouth's one of the authorities that have been offered to delay the election. I pray that they do not do that.
Do you know what, George? I'm just astonished by some of the things I've heard from you today. And you're right, no wonder they're cancelling local elections, because I can't imagine the public of Portsmouth having any truck with that sort of behaviour. Thank you ever so much, Reform Leader of Portsmouth City Council, Councillor George Madrick there. Can you believe? I'm astonished. I just think that this government can't get more wicked. They really can't. I mean, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you want to bring back a bit of euthanasia? Why don't we kill some babies at full term while we're at it? Oh, let's cancel some elections, shall we? Let's pour cement down our oil wells. You know, big story in the world of geopolitics was the fact that Ukraine had used drones to strike some of Russia's shadow fleet, the boats that they use to illicitly flog their fossil fuels on the high seas. And this was 1,000 miles away from Ukraine in the Mediterranean. It's like, wow, the theatre of war has been extended to the Med. And I was there thinking, you know, this is it. It is an act of war to target somebody's native fuel supplies. We don't need to have an act of war against us. We got Ed Miliband doing it all by himself, sabotaging our self-sufficiency in the energy sector. I don't know, let's get rid of farming, shall we? So we can all starve to death at the moment that something bad happens. And while you're at it, you all better learn to fire a gun and defend the nation, because all you working class people, you fascist thugs, you nasty, ignorant people, you gammons, all you people who want to vote reform, you right-wing monsters, you've got to go defend the nation when we decide it's your turn to do that, when we decide to enter some war that you've got nothing to do with, or when we decide to imperil our country so much that it's got no chance of being able to stand on its own 2 feet. You better be ready to defend it, all you horrible people that we've spent the last year and a half putting down, chastising, besmirching. I just don't know where they get off. Right, OK. Well, it's pleasant and cheerful, wasn't it? 0344499 1000 is the number if you want to get involved with the show. Christian Hornchurch has said, what is going to stop this Labour mob cancelling the general election because the MP boundaries aren't ready? This seems like a warm-up of things to come. They will have plans. They will have a way in which to say, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. Oh, it just makes sense. It's saving the public money. It is for your best. Or, if you listen to the show regularly, you will know the one that really sticks in my core. Because it's the right thing to do. No, it's not. The right thing to do, though, is to take an advert break so we can run some commercials and I can get paid. And I'll see you on the other side.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I did my little bit of research into Birzeit in the West Bank, run by the Palestinian Authority, and it was predominantly a Christian place. 1945, the population was 990 Christians and 570 Muslims. Guess what? Today, predominantly Sunni Muslim. So, you know, I think it's about time we as a Christian nation started asking questions if we're going to support Palestine. Why is it that Christians find it very difficult to get to Bethlehem this year? That should be if Portsmouth want to have some sort of working relationship with Birzeit. Perhaps what their first question could be. Right, let's move on now and let's talk about the extremely worrying, disgusting situation that little girls, schoolgirls as young as 10 in Manchester, have been calling up the police saying, we want to go to a Hanukkah party and we're scared. Can we have armed protection? We've now found out as well in London, in Notting Hill in particular, that a painting of a menorah at Westbourne Grove was damaged. It's been vandalised in yet another hate crime incident. And just after that vile, disgusting massacre on Bondi Beach in Australia, police have admitted that people in Manchester were out celebrating it, chanting, globalise the Intifada. What is wrong with them? How did we get to this position? How are we as a society so sick? Let's speak now to Rabbi Jonathan Romain, broadcaster and social campaigner. Jonathan, thank you for coming on the show. It's a real privilege. My understanding is you actually met with Sir Mark Rowley at Scotland Yard last night. Tell me about the nature of the conversation and how that went.
Yeah, that's right, Alex. Well, the Met Police is actually quite diverse in its police force. I suppose it tries to reflect London in that sense, and therefore it celebrates the various festivals, including Hanukkah. So I was there sort of lighting the Hanukkah candelabra along with Sir Mark Rowley. He did as well, and that was all organised by what's called the JPA, Jewish Police Association. There is, by the way, a Christian Police Association, a Sikh, a Hindu and a Muslim one as well. And obviously, you know, although it's a fun festival and it's something we enjoy, there was serious talk, and as you rightly said, there's this horrible background of what happened in Bondi only earlier this week, and of course in our own backyard in Manchester, in the attack on the synagogue there. And he was very clear, actually, that he, I think you know, that he and Manchester have decided that enough's enough with some of the demonstrations. They're not curtailing the right to protest, but they are curtailing the right to hate speech. And those two slogans, from the river to the sea and globalise the Intifada, are now being categorised as hate speech. And it's worth just explaining what they mean. I mean, the river to the sea sounds quite, you know, geographic and maritime. Actually, it means ridding all Jews in the land of Israel from the Jordan, that's the river, to the sea, that's the Mediterranean. In other words, it's exterminating all Jews. Now, for those people who are supposedly into a two-state solution, hang on, that makes a one-state Palestinian solution. So where are you going with that? And as for globalising the Intifada, well, Intifada means, yes, struggle, but it's a particular type of struggle, isn't it? It's a very vicious struggle involving suicide bombers, Molotov cocktails, bombing people at bus stops. So it's a pretty horrible thing to do. So they have said, and I think about time too, these slogans, whatever they originally meant, now really constitute hate speech, and people are going to get arrested. And I think he was quite pleased, really, that he had this power to do things that he may have wanted to do before. Because, to be fair to the police, they are constrained by the law and what they can and can't do.
Right, that was my first thought, actually, because we've seen the buck passing before when there was, the threats of pro-Palestine marches on Remembrance Sunday and things like that. And it seemed very much that the police are saying, well, only the government can say that these should be banned. And the government said, well, the police need to give us the right intelligence and say that they need to be banned. And there seemed to be a load of nobody wanting to end up with a red hot potato in their hands.
Yes, you're right. And there's the third party, which is the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service.
Yes.
Because they tell the police whether someone can be prosecuted or not. But it seems that at long last, probably 2 years late, they're getting their act together. I say that, but of course it is limited to Manchester and London. The other police forces, they aren't taking that lead, or they're not following that lead, rather. Let's hope with time they will. But it seems to me there's no excuse not to, because I think there's a very, people can still protest, they can still say Free Palestine or whatever they want to say. But these two slogans actually are very anti-Jewish. And it's not just the words, it's the actions it leads to. And we've seen that, as we said, and as you said, with the schoolgirls or the Bondi killing, or bad words lead to bad thoughts and bad actions. There is a very clear line between them, and that's why you've got to stop the bad words in the first place.
I'm glad you raised the spectre of the CPS, because a very good friend of mine who is Jewish messaged me this morning when I was getting on the train into London to tell me about something that happened to him. And he's been abused in the streets by women wearing a keffiyeh scarf, of course, calling him a dirty Zionist, shouting at him, telling him he's got to go away, abusing him very loudly, very publicly. He ended up calling the police. He's visibly Jewish. He had the kippah on his head. The police, he says, were exemplary. She then called the police and said, oh, he was the one who started it. I think we all know that's probably unlikely. Well, I know it's unlikely because I know him and I know what his profession is. But what he said was, to be fair, the police were excellent, but the CPS is the issue. They just don't care. And it's interesting that you sort of raised that as the third arm in all of this, and this idea of have things met the threshold of hate speech. But, I was having this conversation yesterday, and my problem is this. They might stop with certain chants. To me, the fact that these marches are even taking place is an affront to the integrity and the security of this nation, because I am of little doubt, given some of the briefings that have been provided to the police and to the government from intelligence agencies and the counter-extremism czar, that these marches represent essentially a coalescing, a curation, a choreography of trying to groom people into anti-Semitism, trying to potentially recruit would-be terrorists. And I have no idea why these are still taking place at all, let alone policing, the various bits of language being used. I don't think that's going to change anything. Is that enough for you, or would you rather see these marches banned?
Well, just to go back on what you said, first of all, the CPS, I don't think it's that they don't care. I think it's they're nervous. Now, whether they should be nervous or not, I think they should be more robust. They're nervous of being accused of being racist. We've had this before with other issues like the grooming gangs. And I think this time they need to get over their nervousness and just have a little bit of courage about the law, particularly as we know that, these lead to horrible results. It's not as if, I can't bear being called names in the street. It's not that. The problem is what that then leads to, and we're talking about deaths and murder and killings and just sort of things that are just so against our British values, as you said. As for the protests, well, I think it's quite noticeable those protests have lost their numbers. I mean, you know, initially it was, as you said, a coalition of a lot of people from different groups. And I think some of the more, if you like, moderate ones, the ones who cared about what was going on in the Middle East, and, you know, why should they not, they've become rather appalled at the way it's going. Similarly with Palestine Action. You know, it seems like, oh, yes, it's a friendly title, but actually when you think of what they've done, I mean, like you may remember how they started off, which is breaking into the RAF at Bryce Norton and destroying some British aeroplanes. Well, how patriotic is that? You know, it doesn't help Palestinians one jot, you know, destabilising a British aeroplane. I mean, what on earth was in their head? No, and yet, you know, how does that help? It doesn't, of course.
Ridiculous. No, I agree. It's utterly ridiculous. And the thing is that what I keep trying to impress upon people who might not understand is so much of this narrative about who the aggressor is has been totally inverted. Let's put aside Gaza. It is a war zone. Horrible things happen in war zones. This real-time sort of prosecution, a bit like commentating over a football match that has taken place over this particular war, has been really quite disturbing and distasteful. But let's put that to one side. The narrative that a lot of the people on the pro-Palestine marches seem to believe is that there were always these people there who were called Palestinians and were Muslims, and then the Jews came along and kicked them out, and therefore the Jews are the genocidal occupiers of Israel. And I'm like, it's totally the other way round. To me, right. Like, you know, I know the history. I'm a Christian. I know exactly what happened from the moment of the Old Testament onwards. And I know historically what's happened in the past 1,000 years, the past 100 years. And I know demographically what has happened throughout the Middle East. And I was just talking then about the radical population change in Bethlehem, where you will not find Christians going to the site of Jesus' birth this year. Very, very few, because it's now incredibly difficult because the Christians themselves have been turfed out. Why is it that in the West, the complete opposite of reality has so effectively been sold and consumed by people who now heartfelt believe it?
Well, it's a mixture of ignorance, sheer ignorance, and also willfulness, deliberate willfulness. Because, as you rightly said, if anyone knows their Bible, they will know that the Jewish people were there right at the beginning. And some of the places named in the Bible, you know, Jerusalem, Beersheba, Jericho, Hebron, you know, these were Jewish sites, Jewish places where Jewish people lived, what, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. So to complain that the Israelis are colonialists or imperialists is just absolute nonsense. You can, you know, have issues with how Israeli policy is today, but Jews have been there ever since 4,000 years, since the Bible. If you value Christianity, you have to value the Old Testament as well as the New, and you have to say this is a Jewish homeland. Doesn't mean to say other people can't live there, but to say that the Jews don't have the right to be there, it really is unhistorical, and it's just, well, I won't say it's immoral, but it's just willfully ignorant.
I think it's utterly baffling. You know, it was the Ottomans, it was the Muslims who came and chucked the Jews out. Well, in one of the sort of long chapters of the history of Israel. But Rabbi, thank you ever so much for joining me on the programme and, you know, hopefully beginning to set the record straight, at least among the right-minded folk of the United Kingdom who, of course, listen to talk. That's you. Right, if you want to send me your thoughts on what we've been talking about, it's 03444 1000. That's the number to call. Kieran is poised and waiting at the telephone line. I can see him through the glass. He just scratched his head and he's looking at the telephone, wantonly hoping it's going to ring because he's waiting for you. And if you do that, he'll take down your number and your details, and then he'll give you a call back when we are taking calls at the end of this hour. If you'd rather send me a WhatsApp message, you can. It's the same number. You can even leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before you write your message, please. OK, we're taking a short break now. But when it comes to the audacity of the Labour Party thinking they are above democracy and above the law, well, would it be of any surprise that Bridget Phillipson, who doubles up as the Minister for Women and Equality, has decided the Supreme Court's ruling that actually being a woman comes down to biological sex has got it wrong because she knows best, doesn't she? That's right. Let's arise, Lady Phillipson. You know it all. Oh, thank goodness the Messiah has come back in female form. We're going to take a short break just before we discuss that.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Front page of the Telegraph today. Big headline: Phillipson blocks safe spaces for women. We have been through this, haven't we? We've been called TERFs. We've had protesters throw "we" around the place, physically threaten feminists, call for their rape and murder online. Very nasty have these men been, who are so desperate to get into our changing rooms and toilets, it had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court to actually tell us the truth we knew anyway, which is you're either born a boy or a girl. It's basic biology. DNA is in every single cell of your body, that stamp of whether you're XX or XY in your chromosomes. And so finally it goes up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yes, you know, actually being a woman is a biological thing, and that in order to protect female-only spaces, that is where the definitive line should be drawn. And so this was then given to Bridget Phillipson, who doubles up as the Women and Equalities Minister. And she sat on it. Rather than using this guideline to help the NHS or Hampstead Heath Ponds, or whatever it is, say, well, this is what we've got to do because, well, that be the rules. She sat on it and decided not to do anything and not to do anything and not to do anything. Oh, not anymore. Out she pops just before Christmas, and she's given a statement to the High Court describing the proposed rules as trans exclusive, and is refusing to sign them off because she says that transgender women would therefore not be able to use lavatories. And she goes on to say that, well, women wouldn't be able to take their infant sons into changing rooms at swimming pools. Now, is she being disingenuous here? Is it about clarifying what the law is so there are no loopholes and no confusion going forward? Or does she just not want to do it? Let's get the opinion of Jane Sullivan, who's a spokeswoman for Women's Rights Network. Welcome to the show, Jane. What do you reckon? Is she just being very precautious because this has been a very heated debate and it's important we get the technicalities right, or is she being a saboteur?
Well, I agree. I think she's being a saboteur, and the guidance that the HRC has written is not trans exclusive. It's males we want to exclude. Using the word trans is extremely confusing. It muddies the waters. What we want are males out of women's spaces and women's sport. And we want them out for very good reasons. Women deserve dignity, privacy, and above all, safety when they are changing or going to the loo or having a shower. So I think it's completely awful that Bridget Phillipson has had these guidelines on her desk for so many months and she's done absolutely nothing. And yesterday, when that report in the Telegraph came out this morning, it was clear why she's picked a side. She's picked the trans ideology over women and girls' safety. And we know at WRN that mixed-sex changing rooms or changing rooms and toilets that allow males to have access are dangerous. I mean, just last week, we published a report, an FOI investigation of sexual crimes in leisure centres. Now, we all know that our leisure centres over the past few years have moved towards these lovely, cosy sounding changing villages, which are all lovely, except that when you have men changing in facilities next to women and girls, there is crime. So we looked at 256 leisure centres in England and Wales, and absolutely shocking, there were 16 rapes in 1 year. There were 80 incidents of sexual assault reported to the police and 65 cases of sexual voyeurism, sort of sticking a phone or just having a peep under a cubicle. And that's just England and Wales. There's Scotland and Northern Ireland, which we're currently looking at. There are nearly 900 leisure centres around the country and private gyms and things like that. So we looked at 256. So if you extrapolate, you can see that this is not a small issue.
Wow.
This is a big issue. And if Bridget Phillipson seriously wanted to protect women and girls from male violence, she could make a start by sorting out that EHRC guidance, getting it off her desk and out there, because we desperately need it.
I mean, she's been accused by others that she sat on this because she was running for the Labour deputy leadership and she didn't want a backlash from LGBTQ plus members. How cynical. I mean, with those statistics that you just gave me, I totted it up to make it out to be 160-ish incidences, which suggests there's something happening every couple of days. And you said that's only on the tiny sample size that you use. So it seems to me there's probably attacks against women happening potentially on a daily basis. And she's more interested in her own political position, climbing up the greasy ladder of the leftist Labour Party, and she doesn't care about those statistics. She doesn't care which women are now afraid to go to the swimming baths, who are afraid to go to changing rooms, whose lives have been irrevocably changed because they have suffered some form of sexual abuse, because it is terrifying and it changes your outlook forever when this happens. What sort of a cynical woman is she? I do not understand how any woman on this planet can think that that's okay, can think that it's okay for a man to put on a dress, claim to be called Annabelle, and go into a changing room. I have utmost sympathy, I do, with people who suffer genuine dysphoria, as should we all. And I do not believe in persecuting or attacking anybody for living their life as they want to live it. But that also goes for women and girls. If they want to be able to go swimming and they feel uncomfortable having a biological male in the changing room, able to see their naked bodies, then for crying out loud, they do not deserve to have to go through the trauma of being in that situation.
Agree, absolutely agree. And after the report was published, our latest Leisure Centre report published last week, we had masses of emails from people all over the country saying, oh, we've got a new leisure centre being built and they're changing from single sex to mixed sex. Well, why? The evidence is now there that moving from single sex to mixed sex changing rooms is going to present a danger to women.
Yeah.
If we had a minister for women who actually stood up for women, she would be telling local councils, come on, you've got to rethink this. She would be telling Sport England, who have on their website, mixed sex changing rooms are the preferred.
What is the point in having a minister for women if you don't know what a woman is? I mean, that's what it boils down to. It is not just ridiculous and farcical. It's utterly revolting. Jane, thank you ever so much. Jane Sullivan, spokeswoman for Women's Rights Network. Keep fighting the good fight, because it seems to me it is interminable. It's never going to end. And I, for one, will not back down. OK, we are going to take a short break now, but after the break, it is time for your calls. So roll up if you want that to include you. 03444 99 1000 is the number to dial. Hopefully be speaking to some of you just after this.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. Let's do some messages before we start hitting up the voice notes. Merry Christmas to everyone at Talk, says Stace from Bristol. Loving the show. Nothing surprises me anymore with this government. When will this torture of the British citizens stop? Last time I checked, we were a democratic country. When did I wake up in North Korea? Well, quite. Well, I'd say, tell you when. After that snap election, when Rishi Sunak left number 10 and got replaced by Sir Keir Starmer. Oh, Starmer, sorry. Alex, the government is corrupt, especially Sir Keir, the cancellation of local elections. He'll cancel the general elections next if he can. Well, just you try that, sunshine. Joanna in Salisbury says, so Labour spend billions on God knows what and decides they won't pay for an election. Then what if they're not quite ready when the time is up? Well, exactly. People are saying if they have cancelled the mayoral elections, one lot of local elections, now another lot of local elections, doesn't stop them cancelling any elections, not even the big ones. Shall we have a little listen now to Bob on this topic?
Hi, Alex. I think Starmer is going to get us into a war by the general election. Then we'll be on a war footage and then he'll cancel the general election. And that's how he's going to do that. This bloke is a disgrace and a danger to this country. Thanks. Bye.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that sounds like a ludicrous statement to make. Oh, he's going to drag us into a war and therefore he'll say it's a crisis. We can no longer have elections as it's wartime. And yet you wouldn't put it past him, would you? You actually wouldn't at this stage. There is just so much talk, isn't there, about we're all going to have to serve, we're all going to have to get ready. You know, it's going to be a bit like the Second World War all over again. And it's like, is it? What? Russia's turned around and said they don't want to attack Europe. I mean, you can't believe anything Putin says. But seriously? But you do kind of think what sort of national emergency will suddenly magically arise come the next general election, meaning that it can't be held. I definitely have my suspicions. And why? Because suspicions are based on something. It's not exactly far-fetched that this could be in their playbook anymore, is it? Matt says, how is it possible that those who are desperate to be known, treated and viewed as women have so little regard for women's feelings? Show yourself to be the woman that you claim to be, not the self-centered individuals who are placing their feelings and their needs above everyone else. I tend to agree, Matt. It's funny, isn't it? All these people saying, I'm a woman, I'm a woman. The people they seem to like least are other women. So they certainly don't have much of a sorority mindset, to put it mildly. Not everyone, of course, not everyone. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who are genuinely dysphoric, men who have lived their lives as women for a lot of their lives and have just been quite peaceful and don't want any of this stuff. And sadly, they're often at the sharp end of some of these more vociferous campaigners, let's say. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere because I am back just after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Thank you for sticking with me and welcome aboard if you've only just had the opportunity to join me. That is perfectly okay. You do know you can go on the Talk app or you can indeed go on YouTube and watch it all the way back from the beginning at your leisure whenever you want. I'll keep you company with whatever you're doing, wherever you are. You don't have to let me know. I'm not actually going to be there in person now, am I? If you're sitting on the throne or in the tub, but I will keep you company if that is where you would wish me to be present. Now, you may have noticed if you're watching on YouTube, I've got some pretty beautifully decorated trees behind me on my sort of view of the River Thames with beautiful golden baubles, little star on the top. What does that star remind you of? Oh, that's right, the Nativity with the star that guides the three wise men to the manger in Bethlehem where Christ the Lord was born. Because guess what? That is where the word Christmas comes from. Mass being a feast and Christ being the anointed one, you know, the person that Christians, followers of the Anointed One, believe is the Lord, believe is a God incarnate. And we celebrate that every year because we're so pleased that he got born and saved us all. Hurrah! And do you know what really sticks in my craw? This idea now that everyone wants to get on the back of Christmas, so it's so nice, isn't it? Oh, we give gifts, we have the Christmas party, we wear our sequins, we snog under the mistletoe, we have a bit too much to drink, la, 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 la. Happy holidays, I mean, great. You know, blow yourselves up, have a great time, get absolutely trolleyed. I love it. That is the British spirit. And I'm not saying that to celebrate Christmas, you have to be a Christian. But what I am saying is you do not get to turn around, sabotage, hijack, appropriate the biggest religious festival of the biggest religion in the world and then tell the people that follow it that they can't have it anymore because it's a little bit too Christian. How dare they? And yet this now seems to be commonplace all of a sudden. Oh, you gotta say deck the halls, don't you? But it's not just that. It's not just, oh, we better get the religious element out of Christmas because some people might be offended. Like whom, can I just say? A lot of people now are going to the extent of trying to cancel Christmas altogether in case the very idea of peace, goodwill, exchanging presents and, you know, happy tidings to all and sunder is somehow dangerous. For crying out loud, it's the birth of a baby. For just honestly, make it make sense. Let's speak now to Chief Babber, King of the West Country, Mr. James Price. Oh, James, I know you and I are big fans of the late, great JC, as we should be. I don't necessarily behold anybody else to go to church on Christmas Day to do midnight mass, to say prayers, or even have a nativity scene. And if they don't want to spare a thought of what it all represents, OK, fine. Let that be on them. Everyone has free will to believe what they want to and follow whichever religion they wish to follow. But I am fed up with Christmas being considered somehow dangerous and offensive. Where has that come from?
Absolutely crackers, isn't it? Christmas crackers, some might say. This is a part, I think, of a fairly concerted effort that has been going on for quite a long time now. Firstly, to cheapen and demean the idea of, oh, well, you know, Christmas, it's just kind of hugs, isn't it? And it's, oh, let's just be nice and cuddly. I mean, and it is those things. But where do those things come from? They are not secular ideas that sprang up out of nowhere in the post-1945 period. These are all fundamental and central tenets to Western civilization itself, as brought about by the greatest and most bizarre and wonderful revolution of all time, that of the coming of the Christian world. You cannot explain to a pre-Christian Roman person what the world looks like now. They wouldn't have understood the idea of the lion laying down with the lamb. They wouldn't have understood what it is to give charity to those and to forgive those people, even if people don't deserve it. These are really weird and strange and complicated and quite difficult ideas sometimes. It's why there's some of the smartest people of all time have spent thousands of years trying to work these ideas out. And yet, those ideas, practiced imperfectly as they may have been, created the greatest wondrous civilization of all time and led to all the technological and scientific and moral advancements and the great art and beauty and all the rest of it. But I'm sure that some HR managers in 2025 know better than all of them.
I mean, this is the thing, okay? I think that we need to be a bit more assertive now as Christians and say to non-believers, OK, fine, celebrate Christmas. We would love you all to celebrate Christmas, but actually we want to push the Christmas story and the story of Jesus and make sure people do know it. Because as you rightly said, if you were to, I don't know, go on Grok or ChatGPT or whatever and ask it, list all the biggest inventions, innovations and discoveries in the world, be it the internet, the vaccines, steam engines, electricity, gravity, pretty much all of them have come out of Christendom. And not just that, such a great many have come from people who were dedicating and practicing Christians, because Christianity is all about perfecting yourself, trying to become more like God. It is not one of those movements that says, well, you know, God's word is final, so better not work in that laboratory and mess about with new ideas. Completely the opposite. Like you said, Christianity has brought the concept of human rights that all these leftists seem to enjoy so much. The sort of be kind tolerance agenda. Guess what? That didn't exist in the ancient world, where they were like slaughtering each other in gladiatorial rings. That came about as a result of the historical fact that someone was born called Jesus of Nazareth, and he ended up having this huge global following which radically changed the world. Now, whether or not you believe in the virgin birth, the resurrection, crucifixion, etc., God incarnate, I don't think there's many people out there, many, you know, studied historians who don't believe Jesus existed. He existed. He was a historical figure. And I think it's about time we take the moment of the celebration of his birth to push that, to remind people that whether or not you believe in the holy aspect, he existed, and he was fundamentally probably the most important human being to ever be born on this planet, and that is why the whole world celebrates. So let's put him right back into the heart of the story.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and you've hit the nail on the head here. There are two things that we can separate. We can have a theological conversation about whether God exists and about whether, if he did, he sent himself down in the form of his own son and all the kind of complicated stuff of the Trinity. And we can even debate the primary sources about whether or not this person was crucified and came back from the dead. The sources, by the way, a hell of a lot better than they are for almost everything else through most of history, in terms of, you know, Alexander the Great. Not very good evidence for him by comparison to Jesus, just to be nice and controversial there for a second, but it's completely true. So we can have that kind of debate, or we can debate again the impact that the teachings of that person and how they have been received has changed the world and made the world the better. There will be some weird lefty fedora wearing, neck beard, mouth breathers who will go, actually, lots of other civilizations came up with other stuff. Well, yes, they have done in some cases, although I think that's been largely overblown, and certain cultures and civilizations that conquered into Christian lands kept some of that stuff, and we can have that historical conversation another day. But what it would be great for people as we approach Christmas to think about what's been happening in the last couple of decades. We've got the world that Richard Dawkins wanted, and he promised us we had got rid of all of silly Christianity, we'd have flying cars. Can't see any of those. We have great rationality. There's people out there who think there are 87 genders, and we have peace on earth. Well, this time last week, I saw a crowd of people screaming Allahu Akbar on Park Lane in the centre of London, calling for the release of a convicted jihadist terrorist. So maybe we could do with just a teensy bit more of that doctrine of forgiveness and sharing love that Jesus tried to teach.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because even people like Richard Dawkins later on in his career came to recognise that he is now would consider himself a cultural Christian, that actually Christianity has been the most important movement across the entire globe, and that this idea that celebrating the life and the birth of Jesus is somehow, to quote the sort of phrase that these leftists might use, othering, it's exclusionary. In what way? Because the wonderful thing actually about the culture of Christianity is it has always shared its advances and its progress and its development and its democracy and its narrative of rights. It is probably the most welcoming, inclusive religion that you could ever dream of. It exists in every corner of the world. It is extremely fast growing in places like China, which is essentially sort of tried to criminalise the concept of religion completely. I'd say the keystone now of the Anglican movement is probably Africa and found throughout the Commonwealth. It is, when it comes to looking at a religion that has never particularly tried to impose itself, but has evangelised and invited people to join it and generally just done a heck of a lot of good for the world. It is Christianity, and yet all of these people who want to denigrate it and call it mumbo jumbo, or somehow, and this is the one I don't understand, make it sound like it's somehow unpleasant or backwards or persecutory, are people who've never opened a Bible in their lives.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Just a quick thought experiment for everybody. Imagine what were to happen if, as some very hopeful predictions say, that China does become the biggest Christian country in the world. What would happen? What would happen if you added another billion people? I think there's something maybe 250 million Christians already in China, although, as you say, they've got to keep it slightly under wraps. And Christians are used to being persecuted throughout the world. Imagine if that country were to turn Christian. Do you think the treatment of Uyghurs, the treatment of all the people there would be so cruel? Do you think the way they treat people as robots, their own people, the way they try to spy and break down other countries and all the rest of it would happen? I don't think so. And I'll say one more quick thing, Alex. My sister back in Gloucester, I love her ever so much, and she's training to become a vicar. It may surprise... She is, and it may surprise regular viewers and watchers that she is a bit of a lefty, and we disagree on huge amounts of things. And yet we both believe in this wonderful doctrine of Christ, and we believe the nice things that it can do in the world as well. And it's something that even can unite me and my lovely lefty sister. So it doesn't need to be a political thing. I don't want it to become a political thing. I want everybody to be able to share in this, because it doesn't need to be and wouldn't benefit from being a partisan thing the way that some people on the left try and say, oh, well, you're a Christian, you must be a nutter, blah, 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 blah. No, it transcends all of that. And I hope at Christmas people can go and see some of this. She said to me once in the church that she's been doing some of her training in and the rest of it, that people will just randomly walk in the middle of the day, truck drivers, bus drivers, random normal people who've never come across it before but have felt something and seen the way the world is going and have come in and asked humbly and shyly and slightly embarrassed, can someone talk to me a bit about this, please? And I hope that more people who haven't been in a church for a long time, after hearing and watching this, might be tempted to do it this Christmas.
There's something, he's at work. A lot of us Christians think that he's on the move at the moment. Something really interesting is happening in society. The church I used to go to in London, you can't get into it for love nor money. It's like queuing up outside Fabric nightclub in the 90s. It's so busy. You're going to be in the Shire this Christmas, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Good. Maybe we can do a little bit of churching together then. That would be lovely. We should coordinate our schedules. At least have a cup of mulled wine somewhere. But it'd be nice, actually, to go to an actual church service, because it is very beautiful and special. And, you know, like you just said, that there are people who don't know how to access Christianity. And I'm not trying to sort of evangelise and convert people live on air. I kind of am, but, you know, let's pretend I'm not. But what I would say is this. There's so much there now. If people are going, what is this religion that underpins our country? Oh, I've been doing Christmas every year. You know, I'm now 48 years old, but I've never really thought about the whole Christ thing. You don't have to go through the agony necessarily of opening the Bible, starting at the beginning of Genesis and going like, whoa, that's a heavy read. There is so much out there. There are things on Amazon Prime, on Netflix, you know, just fill your boots, I would say, this Christmas. Put Christ back at the heart of Christmas and, you know, just have a beautiful and blessed time.
I couldn't say it better myself. I think it'd be a wonderful thing to do that old BBC impartiality nonsense that we probably don't need to do. Other religions are, of course, available, and many of them have very admirable qualities. But look at the United Kingdom, look at Europe, look at America, look at Australia, look at Canada, look at countries and cultures that have been built on these ideas. Look at those that haven't, and make the judgment for yourself. And then go and try and see if what people for thousands of years have been thinking about might have something to it.
Let's bring in Roy into the conversation. Roy is in Hampshire. Good afternoon to you, Roy.
Hello, darling. It's just, you know, when I was young and the teachers at school, in primary school, used to tell us all about baby Jesus and the birth of Jesus. And, you know, it was a lovely time. And my old mum would take us up the West End to see all the lovely lights. I mean, Christmas Eve, my old mum, she never went to bed. She'd be up all night baking the mince pies and, you know, getting ready for Christmas. And we'd put all the paper chains up, you know, used to buy the paper chains and stick them together and put them all over the room. You know, it was just a lovely time. And when my daughter was a little girl, you know, our Christmases, you know, I love Christmas. And now they're trying to cancel it, these people.
Yeah, I mean, they really are Scrooges. It's like they don't know what is good for society and what is healthy for us. And, you know, I've said this regularly to people. If you're going to take God out of the equation, you better have something good to replace him with. And that something good is not Greta Thunberg, and it ain't pronouns. And it does seem to me, I don't know if you've got this way, and I don't know if you felt this way, James, but it feels to me that we're just having the least Christmassy Christmas I've ever experienced this year.
Yes, that's an interesting and sad thought, if it's true. I think that when times are tough, it can always feel that way. But I think that's why it's important to try and tap into this stuff. As you say, Alex, there are resources people can Google. It's all around. There's been the pair of us wanging on about it for a good few minutes now as well. And there's a lot out there to do. And, you know, I think it does add a certain something special. In the same way that when you see a palace or a castle or something in the United Kingdom, to know that there's still a monarchy, a real monarchy, living one attached to it, to me makes that stuff feel more special. That's why the twinkling lights that Roy talked about, the paper chains, having it be connected to this story that millions, billions of people have connected to themselves and to the rest of us going back thousands of years. As Edmund Burke would say, the real social contract is between the living and the dead and the not yet born. And I think there is something we will lose if we ever lose any of those sorts of connections, whether it's about the Christian idea of Christmas, celebrating Christmas at all, coming together, or other kinds of traditions, because the worst thing that the kind of faceless bureaucracy wants to try and get rid of is our sense of tradition, our sense of connection to the past and our hope for a better future. And we will never, ever let them take that away from us.
Exactly. Oh, I always love catching up with you, James, and I can't wait to spend some of my Christmas with you as well. And thank you ever so much to Roy for his call. And you know, why don't you pour yourself a nice glass of wine? Because this is the other cool thing about Christianity. Jesus loved a good old glass, didn't he? Last Supper. Woohoo, let's get on it, lads. Go to that wedding, ain't got no wine. Oh, watch what I'm going to do to the water. He liked to drink, did our Jesus. Good on him. So while you pour yourself a glass of wine, mulled or otherwise, why not put out the big bangers of the Christmas carols, but listen to the words. Listen in Hark the Herald Angels Sing, where it says, peace on earth, mercy mild, God and sinner reconciled. Think about what that means. It means forgiveness. It means harmony. It means gentleness. It means love. What a beautiful, beautiful thing to be celebrating. Let's not let the Scrooges take it away from us. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but we are then, after the break, going to be talking to David Shipley because he has done a fascinating piece weighing up the fiscal arguments for mass migration. And guess what? Just doesn't add up anymore. We're discussing that after this.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I was just using the advert break then to listen to some Christmas carols, having inspired myself to do so. Do you know my absolute favourite Christmas carol of them all? And I blooming love the lot of them. God, I well up, I do, especially when they're sung by a choir. But the absolute biggest banger of the lot of them has got to be O Come All Ye Faithful, especially the verse where it says, sing choirs of angels, and the death camp begins, and oh my goodness, I'm just... shivers down my spine, tears in my eyes every time. It is absolutely glorious. What's your favourite? Which is the one that you wait for when you go to the carol service? 03444991000. WhatsApp me, let me know. Give me a rendition or a voice note, I don't know. Right, let us talk now to David Shipley, prisoner and justice, ex-prisoner, sorry, and justice commentator, because he's written a fascinating piece in The Spectator, unpicking the argument that we've always been force-fed about why we need mass migration. That's right, don't worry about the social cohesion, we just sweep that under the carpet, because at the end of the day, we need it because it helps contribute to our GDP, everyone's getting older, no one's going to do these jobs, we'll be on our knees without immigration. Isn't that right, David? Apparently, you say, no, it is not. Tell us more.
Well, you're absolutely right. Not only do I say, no, it's not. Something called the Migration Advisory Committee says it's not. And this is important because this isn't, a think tank or a campaign group that criticises migration. This is the government's own advisory body. This is funded by the Home Office. It's sober academics, none of whom are, historically aggressively against migration or anything like that. And they have, in their annual report this year, destroyed the entire case for mass migration. What they've started to do is they've actually broken down different kinds of migration, which might sound incredibly obvious, but it's not really been done before. So they've demonstrated, for example, that asylum seekers are unambiguously negative fiscally. That's their terms. The cost of them, they will never repay the cost of supporting them. And estimates they come up with suggest it could cost about £350,000 in present-day money over the lifetime of each asylum seeker who's granted asylum here. And to put that in context, £350,000 is about the total lifetime tax paid by one median British worker. So an entire average worker's tax contribution gets devoured by every asylum seeker we take in. So when you think about it, last year about 111,000 people arrived and claimed asylum. At least 2/3 of them were not getting granted asylum. So that's 66,000 lifetime contributions of taxpayers devoured with just 1 year's worth of asylum grants. But it's not... Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, the thing is here, I mean, they tried to push this on us a long time, didn't they? When we were saying it's not just about GDP, even if there was an argument to say that immigration increases GDP, definitely reduces it GDP per capita. And then we said, but culturally, societally, it's too much. Infrastructure can't keep up, strain on public services. Then we're told the argument, well, we need these people to do certain jobs because Brits can't do them, which I don't think is true. Brits won't do them, which might have some truth in it, but those people who are out of work, largely at record levels today, should be made to do them, in my opinion. But what the other argument will be, well, we are a rich nation. These people are coming from poor nations. We're a rich nation. Doesn't matter if it's going to cost our economy because we can afford it. Do you think there's plausibility in that line of argument?
Well, I think, first of all, we can't afford it. So remember, this is just the money that is paid out by taxpayers. That it doesn't factor in the costs of supporting asylum seekers before they're granted asylum, or indeed the social harms that are done by large numbers of strange men arriving in our country, including crime, including women becoming victims, children becoming victims. But also, we do not have a moral obligation to house the whole world. We are not obliged to let anyone who wants to come to the UK live here until we are really poor and we can't afford it anymore. That is an insane way to run a country. Our first duty is to care for British people, and that means keeping our borders secure, not letting in millions and millions of men who are going to cost us a fortune. We do not have an obligation to house these people.
No, I totally agree. Why? I mean, I still don't understand this sort of suicidal empathy that various elements of the political establishment and a lot of progressive elites like to adopt, with this idea that actually doing so, bending over backwards for foreigners to come into our country uninvited and illegally, is somehow moral. I mean, and we're just talking about Christmas and Christianity. I am a Christian. Jesus said, welcome the stranger, treat them as your own. I think we largely do that as a country, and by and large, I uphold that. But we were never talking about these mass migratory flows, people who are abusing the system, people who do not culturally assimilate, which is what we're seeing now in the modern era, and seeing a downflow of crimes connected to open borders. And yet, for some reason, somehow, one is still portrayed as morally bankrupt if you make a case against these people, essentially coming into our country from other countries saying, well, look, I want to come here because I want better opportunities in life compared to where I come from. Whereas I would argue, surely the better thing to do morally is when you think how much they're costing us, right? You look at €400,000, so as you said, £350,000 over the course of a lifetime. That £350,000 sent to Syria instead goes a lot further for these people than it does us housing them over here. Do we need to actually economically now rethink what is better value for money for the taxpayer? Because if we were prepared to plough, I'm not saying that this is the correct approach, but fiscally speaking, if we were to plough an equivalent amount of money that we're currently spending on four-star hotels, smartphones, the various cases and appeals that follow someone's deportation order, etc., etc. If we were to accumulate all that money and actually hand it out as foreign aid, or put that into the countries where these people are coming from, it would go so much further. It's why, in many respects, the Rwanda idea was such a good one, because it gave people a job in a stable country, in decent accommodation, and yet the cost was so much lower. And arguably, Rwanda is probably closer to home for these so-called asylum seekers than the UK is.
Yeah, I think it's quite like that. So I think, I'm Christian as well, and I think it's notable that in the Bible and the Gospels, Jesus talks about all the nations in the world. There's no suggestion that Jesus came to eliminate on earth, this era, all national borders. That's not what his message was. I think really the people who think there should be no borders are not motivated by Christianity. They're motivated by this strange secular religion that developed after World War II, where this sort of huge guilt over the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust turned into this pathological altruism. And it's not really altruism either, because we know that actually by importing, for example, many Afghan men, we are causing many British women and girls to become victims of sexual offences. And so that's not actually altruistic, but it helps people feel as if they're doing something good. And I think it's about this sense of feeling. You're absolutely right. Rationally, if we spent that money overseas, we would do far more good. But then we wouldn't get this sense of making self-sacrifice, of harming ourselves to do good. And I think that's part of what motivates us. I think it's almost a religious impulse in a strange way amongst these people. But the MAC in their report have made it clear the issue with asylum seekers, for example, is they have what they say low employment rates, low wages, high rates of economic inactivity. Essentially, they don't work very much. When they do, it's not for very much money. But it's not even just asylum seekers. Even the economic migrant visas they looked at aren't particularly good. The partner visas, so when people come over on a partner visa, each person on that visa costs us over £100,000 negative over the course of their lifetime. And even when you look at the skilled worker visas, it seems like they are only very few of them really make a contribution. 70% of the contribution is concentrated in the top 30% of earners. So across the whole system, it's not really making sense. But the bit actually in the report, which I think is most shattering to the whole mass migration model, is where they explain why this has happened. And they talk about the fact that historically, all of our modelling about migration and its impacts only covers 5 years. So we only say we're only interested in what happens 5 years after the migrant arrives. Then we just stop modelling. So we never model their costs when they get old, when they get sick, when they need pensions. You know, obviously when we get older, we need more support. And what they say is that, you know, essentially, had we been doing it that way, had we actually been modelling over the whole lifetime, we would have realised that most of our migration imposes more costs than the short-term benefits. And that just breaks the whole argument that we've been pushed for decades, decided that, you know, we need migrants to pay for our pensions, we need them to pay to support the state, they're going to be good for growth. Actually, we now know that almost all of this mass migration is a huge cost to us.
And it's of no surprise to me, that is for sure. But a brilliant article by you, David, in Spectator. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when we come back, we're going to be returning to the theme of essentially the cancellation of democracy, because the Labour government has decided to cancel even more local elections. That's having cancelled local elections, then mayoral elections, and now even more local elections. Why not just get rid of the concept of elections altogether, Sir Keir? Why don't you go take advice from your mate Xi Jinping over in China? They don't think it's worthwhile putting the government's existence to the plebiscite. Surely you're held back by us challenging your thoughts and beliefs, because everything that you do is the right thing to do. So don't let us get in your way. Just strip us of the vote altogether. There you go, my son. That's how you can sort out the country. We're going to be discussing that with the brilliant Matthew Goodwin Freeman, who's a Conservative councillor, just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, we were told when local elections were cancelled last year that it was because there was reorganisation, but don't worry, there's going to be the mayoral elections. Then we were told a couple of weeks ago, actually, there won't be mayoral elections because of more reorganising that needs to be done. But don't worry, there's still going to be other local elections. And now we're being told, no, you're not going to have those either. In fact, 63 councils have now been invited by Labour to postpone next year's local elections. This means that 10 million more people are now going to be robbed of the opportunity to vote in May. Now, what sticks out to me, and no doubt to you, is that every single council election that's being cancelled is going to be led probably by the Lib Dems, the Tories or the Labour Party. And especially those last two, the legacy parties, will probably end up losing seats because, as we all know, there's a new political movement in town called Reform UK. And where there have been local elections, Reform UK have won them. The 4 mayoral races that have been cancelled were all predicted to swing to Reform. And one has to wonder, of these 63 councils, how many of those would swing to Reform. But even if they didn't, it's just basic mathematics, isn't it? That if you're a Labour councillor or a Conservative councillor, because there's now another political entity that you're going to have to fight to retain your seat, the likelihood is, well, you're probably a bit more jeopardised than you have been before. So when the government says, do you not want to have the elections? The tendency would be to say, yeah, no, probably not, because turkeys do not vote for Christmas, do they? However, both the Tories and Reform have accused Labour of running scared of voters after Sir Keir Starmer has said he's going to scrap next May's elections. Let's speak to a Conservative councillor now in the form of Matthew Goodwin Freeman, who is a councillor in Hatch End. Hi, Matthew. Love having you on the show. What, you got a Christmas jumper on there, son?
So I ran a poll to see what people wanted for my Christmas jumper, and it is Yule Britannia. I mean, come on, it's totally me.
Let's have a look at that thing. Oh, we love to see it. That's a beautiful jumper, son. I do like it. Now, my understanding is your council isn't one of those that's going to have elections postponed. This doesn't necessarily...
Odds are happening. I will be on the ballot paper and I'll be fighting for every vote.
Ah, so you are going to have an election. Now, I understand why the Conservatives have put out a statement saying that the Labour Party are running scared. That's according to election spokesman Sir James Cleverly. They thought they could completely overhaul local government and stack the deck in their favour. They were wrong. Well, they weren't wrong because that's what they're doing. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick has said even during the pandemic, elections were not cancelled for a second year running, slashing jury trials, cancelling elections. These are the hallmarks of a government that doesn't trust the people. Well, it's a hallmarks of a government that knows what the people are going to vote, and it won't be for them. But the thing is, there's also been a statement given by East Sussex County Council. A spokesperson said it's welcome the government is listening to local leaders and has heard the case for focusing our resources on delivery in East Sussex, particularly with devolution and the reorganisation of local government, as well as delivering services to residents. This is one reason we have argued for the postponement of county council elections in May. Other strong arguments are the cost to the taxpayer of electing councillors for just 1 year before further elections to prepare for unitary authorities, etc. Now, the thing is, East Sussex County Council is run by that's right, the Tories. So it seems to me that Conservatives are also running scared, aren't they?
Well, the thing is, it's about value for taxpayers' money. I personally think let's crack on with elections. Let's get them out the way. You know, elections come round in cycles. There isn't really a reason to cancel elections. But at the end of the day, elections cost money. It's taxpayers' money. And so what's the point in having an election now if then in 12 months' time, that council's not even going to exist? You can't make change that quickly. It's going to be value for money lost. But the caveat to all of this is, do we trust that the actual elections are going to happen ever? Because one thing with government is they never get stuff done. So they say that reorganisation is going to happen in 2027. But what happens if it then becomes 2028, 2029, 2030? Suddenly you could have had a whole set of elections and then re-elections.
So this is my problem here now, Matthew, which is I perfectly take your line of argument there. If we're going to have elections just for a year, the cost of doing the plebiscite and then someone being in position for such a little amount of time before it's a whole load of upheaval again, why waste the time and energy? And I also do take the argument that, well, when it comes to Labour Party, maybe they're just going to like playing this particular card. Now they have it in their deck. But that isn't what your election spokesman is saying. So James Cleverly is saying that Labour's running scared of the voters. Robert Jenrick has said pretty much the same. It seems to me that the people who have been put out to answer this particular question both think it's not appropriate to cancel the elections, and yet the Conservative-led councils, when given the opportunity, are saying, yes, we want to. So why is the Conservative Party not saying to their Conservative-led councils, you're given the option, take the elections, have the elections, because it is the correct thing to do? If that is what the spokespeople for the party at the top of the tree are saying, how come that doesn't seem to be the same hymn sheet or carol sheet, given the time of year, being sung from when it comes to Conservative-led councils?
Look, I'm not here to tell each council what to do. My elections are happening. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be fighting for it. I wouldn't want my elections cancelled. It's down to each council, I guess, to take part in this consultation and say what is best for their area. But at the end of the day, that's the balancing act that has to be made. Is it worth having an election and then in 12 months' time that council doesn't even exist? Those leaders, those councillors, those portfolio holders don't even exist.
Well, I get that. So therefore, your election spokesman would have been far better saying, what's the point in having the elections, given that in a year's time they're not going to exist? We actually back the Labour Party, which is why our Conservative councils will be taking up the option to postpone our elections. Otherwise, what he's saying is just utter vacuous baloney, isn't it? It's all this and nothing else. It's talk the talk, but ain't walking the walk.
The counter-argument would be, no, let's have these elections. They may not be as dreadful as anyone thinks, or even if they are. Look, if frankly, at the end of the day, a new council comes in, has a mandate to do what it likes. That might change the result of the consultation on reorganisation. A new council comes in and says, no, do you know what? We don't want to be reorganised into oblivion. We want this local level of representation, parish, district, and county council. So that is the balancing act people have to make. I'm very much in the favour of elections, no taxation without representation. So my elections are happening. I'm going to be out there, and I hope that others are too. I don't think we should be cancelling elections, but I can understand if the council is genuinely going to be dissolved in 12 months' time, what's the point in wasting? I mean, elections are 50, 60, 70,000 pounds each. It's a lot of taxpayers' money that much other people would rather spend on potholes, collecting the bins and cleaning the streets.
I mean, let's look at some of the data here. Labour has a majority in 18 of the 63 councils that have been asked about the potential delay. The Conservatives have a majority in 9 of those councils and the Liberal Democrats in 7. But the Conservatives are the party defending the largest number of seats, 610, which is more than a quarter of those currently due for re-election in May. I'm afraid it seems to me the Conservatives had better get their story straight, because if Sir James Cleverly is the election spokesman, one would imagine if he's so interested in elections, he might tell his councils around the country to blimmin' well go ahead and hold them, which they're not doing, and you can see why. So it's not just the Labour Party running scared, in the words of Sir James Cleverly, it's his party as well, isn't it?
I completely get that. As I've said, I'm in favour of elections. The Conservative Party is saying essentially there should be elections. But I think the caveat is if there are very good reasons in your local area, such as the council is not going to exist in 12 months' time, there is no point spending millions of pounds of taxpayers' money paying councillors, officers, running services that are not going to exist. That is the question. What is the better value of taxpayers' money? That's what our jobs are as councillors. Is it the roads, the potholes and the pavements, or is it elections and bureaucracy and electing people who will then be gone in 12 months' time?
Look, I agree with you. I just wish that James Cleverly had the cojones to come out and say it himself. My criticism is more to him playing the political game here.
I have the cojones to tell you my election's happening. I've got those jingle baubles.
Ah, there you go. You have those jingle balls. Well done, you, and good luck for next year in that. Always great talking to you, Matthew Goodwin at Freeman. We're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, what is President Trump up to? He's always up to something, isn't he? I mean, you know, I gotta love him. He's doing all the things he said he would do, which is great. You know, kind of jealous that he's not the president of the United Kingdom. But he does things sometimes, which I'm like, I'm not sure that's quite okay. That's a kind of going a little bit wide of the mark when it comes to protocol, but it does make me laugh. If you haven't seen it, we're going to be discussing this just after the break. Donald Trump has sort of changed a display in the White House of all the past presidents and put new little pictures and new plaques up. And let's just say they're not particularly complimentary. In true Trump style, forget diplomacy, forget honouring your forebears for their contribution to American history. Let's just completely slam their reputations. We're going to be discussing that and also the new UK ambassador to America with the brilliant Greg Swenson, who's chair of Republicans overseas in the UK, just after this.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Welcome aboard if you're only just joining us. That is okay. I'm sure you are very busy at work or picking up the kids or at the supermarket, but it's good to have your company at long last. We were missing you. Now, let's talk to Greg Swenson, chair of Republicans Overseas. You know who he is if you watch regularly, that gorgeous, erudite, tall, fantastic smelling. You don't know that because this isn't smell-o-vision, but he is, I'll tell you that much. A brilliant American who often adorns us via video link or sometimes in the studio where we get to sniff his cologne. Hi there, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex, but I have to point out that I don't wear cologne. But Merry Christmas anyway. I'm sorry if that's offensive. I should say Happy Winter Solstice or something like that.
Joe, that's such a smooth move by you. I don't wear cologne. It's just my natural Gregginess coming out of my pores.
Absolutely.
There you go. I like a good sniff of the Swenson. Now, talking about being weird and creepy, Jeffrey Epstein, there you go for a segue. What are the Democrats up to with this sort of drip feed of photographs? I mean, they've got access now to the 95,000 pictures that have been released, and yet there's this sort of strange game that they're doing of putting a few out every now and then. Right. Oh, look, here's this person, here's that person. But I don't understand what the tactic is here. Can you explain it?
The only thing I can guess is that it's just a distraction. They just want to throw a grenade in the room and have the media talk about anything except, the successes of the Trump administration. So, there's not any real conclusive evidence or any new evidence or anything that is really notable in these photos. It's the same old names that keep coming up. The other thing I could think of, Alex, is this is a little bit of revenge from the Democrats on two of their own who sort of, went against their orthodoxy, and specifically Bill Gates, who wrote a letter a few weeks ago, basically saying it's the end of the climate, insanity, and that everything's going to be okay. And that's just really broken. He really broke with the leftist orthodoxy. And then, of course, there's former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who criticized Joe Biden back in 2021 about the reckless spending and that it would lead to inflation. That was something that's unforgivable to the Democrats, to actually state the obvious. And by the way, he was right. We had 9% inflation a year later.
But I mean, what is, without sort of wanting to cheapen what was a really horrific crime, and it was, everybody knows what Epstein did with those girls, trafficking young children essentially into prostitution. Horrible, probably one of the most horrific crimes that you can commit. And yet this tactic the Democrats seem to be using, to me, is cheapening the narrative, because what I'm thinking now when I look at these names coming out, oh, look, this 2011 dinner of billionaires, guess who was there? It was people like the YouTube CEO, never heard of him, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. It's almost like, well, if you weren't at that party, you were a nobody. What is kind of sad about this is, if anything, it's sort of like, if I was someone important in America, I'd kind of want to be part of these files because it proves that I got the invite. It proves that I was somebody significant.
Absolutely. It was very much the CEO level or founder level of the, hedge fund and private equity elite and the Wall Street elite. And that was a circle that, you wanted to be in. And I think there's a real difference between people who socialized in that circle and people who went to the island and ran around with underage girls. And that's, I think there should be a distinction there. And I think that's one of the reasons both the Democrats and the Republicans did not want to release the files for quite some time, because they felt like people were going to be, publicly humiliated that shouldn't be. Now, if you want to publicly humiliate the people that trafficked in the women, go ahead. I think that's fine. But, and of course, none of these things are indictable. In other words, they couldn't bring any criminal charges based on the files. So that's another reason they didn't want to release them. But at this point, it was really a political liability not to release the files. So I think the president was really forced to.
Let's talk now about the new UK ambassador to America who has replaced Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson, very much a political appointment, raised a lot of eyebrows over here. I still remember, Greg, that interview where you're like, I like the guy, he's really cool. I'm like, just you wait.
Yeah,
it's okay.
You were right on that one.
You're never going to live that one down. But this guy, I've not heard of him, which I take as a mark of being good news, actually. He's a career diplomat. And in many respects, ambassadors have for a long time been career diplomats. They are supposed to be largely politically neutral, but represent whichever government or is in power, or the monarch in terms of British interests, to be the interlocutor, to not sort of be on one side or the other and rub up against the president if there's a change at the top. So Christian Turner, what do you make of him? Have you done your research?
I have. There's not much on him, and he obviously wasn't as controversial as Peter was. And I think, that was a safe bet for Keir Starmer. I mean, he wanted to, he swung for the fences with Peter Mandelson. He felt like Peter had the skill set to get along with President Trump, to shift his politics a little bit, or at least, have a different kind of relationship, because he's got a personality. And obviously President Trump has quite the personality. I think he's going back to playing it really safe with this one, given the disaster that the Mandelson appointment was. So, it's sort of straight down the middle. I don't expect much of it. I don't imagine that the new ambassador has, the same political alignment as President Trump, and that's okay. But it's, I think his role is going to be an extension of 10 Downing Street, and I think that's, something that we'll probably see a little bit more. Straight down the middle, diplomacy from this guy, because he is a career diplomat.
I mean, he's certainly got an impressive CV. Political director of the Foreign Office, British High Commissioner to Pakistan, Foreign Office Director for the Middle East and North Africa, and also previously worked in 10 Downing Street as a private secretary to the Prime Minister. So let's see how he does. But it does seem to me like a far more sane appointment than Mandelson ever was.
I wish him luck.
I wish him luck as well. We need a good ambassador.
It's important.
Let's talk about, this is hilarious. I mean, this honestly has my side splitting, the new plaques in the White House that Donald Trump has put up. He's decided to stick new plaques underneath the portraits of former presidents, which largely attack his predecessors. So one of the plaques, apparently written by the Donald himself, is Joe Biden, which I understand, instead of having a picture of Joe Biden, has been replaced by a photo of the auto pen. It's just too good. And it says, Sleepy Joe Biden was by far the worst president in American history. I mean, it's not exactly statesmanlike or typical presidential protocol, but it certainly has me snickering.
Yeah, I mean, he's funny, okay? And obviously he's not diplomatic. He wasn't elected to be the same old story. If you wanted diplomacy and good manners, you would have elected Mitt Romney. But, that's just not President Trump. And he says what people are thinking. He's actually quite candid, and that candor is really refreshing to many. So I got a kick out of it. I know it's not, typical protocol at all, but it's pretty funny. And he's basically stating the obvious. Biden was in fact probably the worst president ever. And the things that he said that Biden did, he did. He caused the inflation. Maybe there's some hyperbole in there. It wasn't the worst inflation ever. It was in fact the worst inflation in 40 years. So, and he caused it for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think that kind of candor is amusing. I don't expect any real traditional diplomacy or protocol from President Trump, and that's why we like him.
It is indeed. Like, if you like Trump as I do, this is definitely funny. If you don't, he sounds like a mad African dictator, to be fair. But there you go. We love to love him, and other people love to hate him. He keeps us all entertained one way or the other. Greg, thank you ever so much. Always wonderful catching up with you. Right. Taking a short break now, but please don't go anywhere unless it's to your fridge to put another ice cube in your gin and tonic. And I will see you on the other side of these commercials. We still have an hour left to go here on Drive before we hand over to the brilliant Kevin O'Sullivan. So I'll see you in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back to the show. Do you know, I had that sort of crazy creature, Mr. O'Sullivan, in the gallery and in the studios just then. He's such a distraction, that man. He's got Santa's little helper with him today, who looks remarkably like the teenage version of Kev. I now believe that there are two. And I don't quite know what to make of it. I mean, one Kev is enough to have to manage. Having some sort of protege, there's no doubt he's going to turn into a fellow misanthropic monster like he is. Well, good luck, world, is all I can say. But no, lovely, lovely young man who just came in with Kev then and distracted me. So they kind of thrown me off course. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. During the advert breaks, I'm normally sniffing around through my copy, looking at my run order, having a chit-chat with Jodie, or, I tell a lie, doing the cryptic crossword, which I've not been able to advance on because I keep getting distracted. No more. Let's get on with the show, they all say. And let us return to the subject of the cancellation of yet more local elections. Labour has now invited 63 councils to postpone next year's local elections because they are going to be merged into unitary authorities. Why bother wasting the time and the money in having a plebiscite when someone's only going to be in position for a short period of time? We need to be carrying on delivering services, and then when we have made all those mergers and the unitary authorities are ready, then we'll have fresh elections. Well, it does seem to make sense, some might say. right? Except I remember when Sir Keir Starmer, and I said this earlier, was shadow Brexit secretary, and we had voted to leave the EU, and he didn't really like it. No. He thought that we made the wrong decision. And in fact, when it turned out that they were still agitating to not deliver on Brexit and it kept being postponed because of people like Sir Keir Starmer constantly getting on that Eurostar over to Brussels, helping the Barniers of this world to screw us over, it got delayed and it got delayed. And guess what? We ended up having European elections, where MEPs, of which I was one, sat in the hemicycle for all of about 6 months before we left. So, you know, it was all right for him back then. He didn't say to cancel those elections, did he? As shadow Brexit minister. He could have said, well, you know, given we're still negotiating, maybe we shouldn't have those elections because we're probably going to leave because the people said that they wanted to leave. Oh, democracy isn't necessarily really up his strata, though, is it? Let's speak now to Councillor Kirsty Jones. She is the leader of Nottingham People's Alliance. She was formerly a Labour councillor until Kirsty and 5 other councillors left the Labour Party to form the Nottingham People's Alliance, citing Labour failure over local and national policy, Labour's central control of local direction, and indeed council reorganisation. Thank you for joining me, Kirsty. What do you make of the cancellation of these elections? Is it prudent? Is it pragmatic? Is it saving the public purse from being pillaged politically? Or is this potentially, essentially, a Prime Minister running scared of results in what is, in our sort of world, the midterms for a particular government?
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me at all, to be perfectly honest. So as you introduced me, I was a Labour councillor since May 23, but formed Nottingham People's Alliance at the end of October this year. And it's because of their anti-democratic measures within the party. So normally the Labour group in Nottingham can choose its own leader every year. But a year and a half ago, Labour decided that we weren't able to choose our own leader. They stopped us discussing motions and amendments within Labour group. And basically, we felt like we had no kind of say in the local party's direction anymore.
So in terms of, I want to drill down into this because it seems this little apathy towards democracy might be rather endemic to the Labour Party. So you wanted as a group, as the Labour group in Nottingham to be able to choose who your leader is, but the party said, no, we're going to decide that centrally.
Yeah, exactly. That is what happened. And that means that we weren't able to hold those people accountable anymore. So, you know, if we have different opinions to them, there's obviously the opportunity to vote them out. It shows a massive lack of confidence in Labour's views. Because they don't think that they can win when it comes to democratic debate, so they have to shut it down. I think that cancelling these elections because of local government reorganisation, it's kind of anti-democracy on anti-democracy.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't letting you discuss certain motions as well. Can you give me an example of this? You know, I always think when it comes to the way that councils operate and the sort of the privileges they have and the portfolios that they have, a lot of people out there in the world don't really know. They, you know, council election turnouts are some of the lowest. They understand what governments do. Not many people actually always know the division of Labour, if you will, when it comes to unitary authorities, county councils, city councils, local councils, parish councils, etc. So what sort of things were the central Labour Party saying you weren't allowed to discuss?
So one of the things that we wanted to discuss was that the leadership of Nottingham City Council wanted to either close or outsource some of the libraries that the council runs. And we just wanted to propose the idea that actually we should keep libraries in public hands. Another idea that we had was that we wanted to pass a motion saying that Nottingham City Council should advocate for a better funding system for local democracy, including reforms to council tax and things like that, to make it fairer for people. Again, that wasn't even allowed on the agenda in Labour group, and I wasn't really even given a reason why it couldn't be on the agenda.
So yeah, why? This is what I'm trying to figure out. Why are they trying to be so centrally controlling of councils? Because the narrative that comes out of their mouth all the time at the moment is we believe in devolution. We want to give more power to councillors. We want to create extra layers, extra strata of politics to bring the political leaders closer to the people. We are, in fact, the bulwark of defence and development of democracy. And yet here we have a political party from a central platform saying to its councillors, oh, you don't want that library closed, tough luck, you ain't allowed to discuss it. That seems mad.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it kind of strikes at what local government reorganisation does as well, because it doesn't bring decision-making closer to the public. It means councillors will have over 5,000 residents to represent. So chances of a normal member of the public being able to access their councillor at the level that they can do now is unlikely. And it also gives more power to regional mayors. So that's one person. But again, it's very easy for the central party and the, the national government to take control of that one person if you don't have scrutiny and you don't have multiple people.
So, cynically speaking, would it be, in your assessment, potentially the case that this entire reorganisation, not just the cancelling of the local elections, but the excuse being given and the reorganisation itself, is actually more to install their chosen people, their cronies at local level to deliver what they want and essentially sort of create a more megalomaniacal, centrally run Labour Party?
I think that is a big part of their motivation for rushing this through. They know that if they've got less councillors to choose and less scrutiny because it's all going to be rushed through, that they can just put people who they know are just going to say yes to them in those positions, candidates. Whether they get elected or not is another thing coming, like when it comes to the public choosing them, because do they really want another suit that's just going to say yes to everything, or do they want a local representative that will listen to them and advocate on their behalf for their views?
It is rather astonishing to me that they would want to micromanage right to the very bottom level of government. Well, it's not astonishing, actually. I expect no less from them. So where you are you facing elections? Have they been cancelled or postponed?
So we were facing elections in 2027 anyway, so ours haven't been, but I don't know what's going to happen when it gets to 2027. Whenever we ask those questions, they keep saying, oh, we might have like a shadow councillor year for a year, and there might be other elections in 2028. It's all very unclear. They've not even told us what's happening in Nottingham yet.
So there's no guarantees. They're saying, you might have those elections, you might not. We'll decide when we get there. And I wonder how much the party's polling will end up playing a part in that decision. I mean, do you think this is essentially, the Labour Party's been accused by both the Conservatives and Reform of running scared of the voter. Do you think that's justified?
Yeah, so I think that is the correct analysis. It clearly is that they're scared. They've not offered any change, even though that was their slogan at the national level. They've done stupid mistakes like cut winter fuel allowance, even though that wasn't in their manifesto, which, worries a lot of people, and also is something that would have been to their detriment electorally as well. So yeah, I don't think that they're confident in their decision making, and that's why they're acting so defensive and don't want to have people challenging them. Even locally, now that we've formed, they've kicked us off a committee that has been in place for decades that opposition leaders could sit on, because they didn't want to hear our voice in those committees.
How can they do that? How can they kick you off a committee?
So that the leader of the council changed one of the clauses in the committee's terms of reference, which she is entitled to under the Constitution and just has to report it at the next council AGM. But the fact that she chose to do that just as Nottingham People's Alliance was formed is quite interesting. It shows that they really do not like this level of scrutiny.
I mean, these people now are acting rather like the communists of Russia of old, where they changed the rules in order to block out any voice of dissent. I mean, do you find this rather dystopian?
Yeah, it really is, because there are decisions that are being made that are not going through the right processes and causing harm to residents. and the fact that they can't even have someone mildly challenge it. Like, you don't even get a vote on this committee as an opposition party. You just challenge it in public. So they don't necessarily even have to change their decision making. It's just having that voice against what they're doing that they can't stand.
It's astonishing stuff. I mean, it's the more I hear about this, the more dystopian and anti-democratic it seems to become. I mean, the Labour Party came into office promising to smash the gangs. I think the big issue facing the country, up and down the country, all constituencies at the moment, largely speaking, is concerns over immigration. Small boat crossings have soared past 40,600 this year. How is this taking its toll where you are? Is this a big concern in Nottingham?
I don't think it's a big concern in Nottingham at all, to be honest. We're a very multicultural city, and we all get along really well. I think the concerns that I have is that Labour aren't doing the structural changes that are needed that will give people more confidence in that they can receive public services and welfare. They're not taxing the rich more. They're not providing enough so that people are not scared of their neighbours, but instead just comfortable to live their lives and comfortable to be part of our democracy. It's not an issue that I think is important to Nottingham as such, and potentially is over-egged in the media in general. But that's another thing that shows they're not confident to challenge things, because rather than expressing an alternative opinion to the stop the boats narrative or the narrative that other political parties are saying, they can't express that opinion. They go along with it. They just say, oh yeah, we agree with what Reform are saying. We're going to sort of do some of the things maybe a little bit later than Reform suggests that they should be done. So it's, again, the not having the confidence to be able to express political views, because you know that it's not going to appeal to your base, but also not the wider public.
I mean, all politicians face that rock and a hard place. What do the backbenchers want versus what does public opinion demand? And very often you have to try and find something in the middle where nobody's happy. It's been fascinating talking to you, Kirsty. Thank you so much for coming on the programme. And, I was just thinking there about this sort of, what am I going to call it, this fear of being held accountable, and actually this heavy-handedness in ruling the party, the country, the councils, with a bit of an iron fist. Because it struck me as well, something else that Sir Keir Starmer does is if he has a backbencher who doesn't vote along with the government, and normally what happens is on certain issues there will be a three-line whip, i.e. this is so important, it's the budget getting through or something like that you have to vote for it. And Labour actually has a very sizable majority. But every time there's a voice of dissent and someone in his party doesn't vote with the government, he has this tendency of kicking them out the party. He just did this with a particular Labour MP who didn't want to vote with the government when it came to inheritance tax on farmers, because he had a lot of farmers in his constituency and said, I'm listening to them, I feel their pain, this is a disaster, I simply cannot, in all moral conscience, vote with the government on this one. Get out! I mean, it's a very prickly, thin-skinned and rather control-freakish way of running a party and a country. And to hear that the central Labour government, according to Councillor Kirsty Jones, who left the Labour Party for this reason, are essentially dictating who local council leaders should be and what they're even allowed to discuss. Well, doesn't really bode well, does it? It doesn't fill me with warm and fuzzy feelings anyway. Right, OK, we are going to take a short break now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about one of the huge sporting events of the year. This is the Paul versus Joshua boxing match with former European boxing champion Spencer Oliver. That's after this.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he was just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, this is the time of the programme we talk about sport, and what a lot of people realise is I don't know much about sport, but I do like sport that involves death and potential maiming. And so I'm going to put boxing in that category, but I must admit I didn't know much about this particular fight, but I am in luck for two reasons. The first reason is Vanessa, who is the incredible makeup lady and herself likes to bash people about in a ring, just came in to powder my nose and gave me the full lowdown on all of this. I reckon I know more than any pundit now about this fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua taking place in Miami. So let's put to the test Spencer Oliver, because he is a former European boxing champion, TalkSport presenter and host of the Pound for Pound podcast. Hello there, Spencer.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm guessing you know our Ness, don't you? And you know exactly what I mean. She's just come in here.
I do know Ness. And she knows about her boxing, also knows about her MMA, UFC. The girl's up to it when it comes to combat sports.
She really is. I've literally, she just stood there and rattled out all these facts. They're being paid $92 million each. There's going to be 8 3-minute rounds. She knows their heights. There's a 30-pound discrepancy. Jake Paul's 6'1", Anthony Joshua 6'6". Anthony Joshua, GB Olympic gold medalist, 2 times heavyweight champion. Apparently this Jake Paul is just some sort of YouTuber that everyone loves to hate. And who cares if he gets knocked out because he's making a ton of money. Is that about right?
Well, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, to be fair. But yeah, I think from Jake Paul's side, you know, he goes back to 2018 when he first took up the sport of boxing. He done that in the white collar style, and he's moved on. He's progressed. He's gone from strength to strength. I think what he's doing, by the way, for women's boxing is incredible at the moment. He's signing all the top women's athletes. They're getting well paid now. MVP Promotions are doing a great job, but he's decided, I mean, is he delusional, this guy, or what? But he's decided at this stage of his career, he's had 12 wins, 1 loss. The loss come to Tommy Fury. Now weigh that up in comparison to Anthony Joshua, and you go, hold on a minute. Give your head a wobble, mate. Do you really believe that you can beat the former 2-time world heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist? I think he's bitten off a little bit more than he can chew here, and this is going to be a tough night for Jake Paul, and it could be a short one as well.
It sounds like that's going to happen, but, you know, give me 50 million quid and I'll be biffed over the bonds by anybody. You know, as long as they don't kill me or leave me with long-term brain damage, I'll take that. You know, a couple of days in hospital and then hurrah, look at the giant cheque. But is there a problem that, you know, when people do this sort of thing, when it seems to be a mismatched competition, did it sort of cause boxing into disrepute? Why would Anthony Joshua want to take part in this other than, let's say, for the money?
Well, listen, I think that, look, let's look at it from the boxing side of things. Boxing's got a lot of weight on its shoulders right now because this bout has been sanctioned. It is a professional bout. It's over 8 3-minute rounds with 10-ounce gloves. And God forbid something happens to Jake Paul. It does put boxing into disrepute because you go, Who would allow this to happen? These two guys are worlds apart. We're talking about a kid that was on Disney Channel 8 years ago, that, you know, that's done himself very well in the YouTube space and sort of built up a massive following, and has decided to take up boxing to take it to another level, and he finds himself in against Anthony Joshua. But yeah, boxing has a lot of weight on its shoulders, because God forbid something happens to Jake, then, you know, boxing has to answer for that.
Well, this is the thing. If Anthony Joshua cleans out like everyone sort of expects him to, then something could potentially happen to little Disney boy. But if he doesn't, it's not exactly a glowing sort of indictment of Anthony Joshua himself. Apparently, he's been out of action for about 14 months. Is this an opportunity for him just to sort of stretch his muscles again, or is it just for the publicity?
Yeah, I think for Anthony Joshua, he tried to challenge for the world title and win it for the third time. That was against Daniel Dubois back in September at Wembley Stadium, and it went horribly wrong for him. He was on the floor 4 times, had to pick himself up before getting violently knocked out. So for Anthony Joshua, where he's at now, he was going to box on November the 22nd on an undercard fight out in Saudi Arabia, probably getting $1 million for that experience. He was going to go in there against the top 100 fighter, go through the motions of getting back into winning ways in the dressing rooms, warming up, getting your hands wrapped, smelling the arena, all of that sort of stuff, and then getting back to winning ways. Well, he gets that opportunity now for times 75 the money, because I think he's getting $75 million here for this fight. So who wouldn't do that? Why wouldn't you do that? Because, you know, it's the same motions he's going through before he then boxes again, probably in the springtime. And then there's big talks of him and Tyson Fury getting it on in September, the fight that we've all craved for the best part of the last decade, really.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for that money, I would happily go and be, you know, bashed about in the boxing ring. Why wouldn't you? It's utterly extraordinary, man. So, if people wanted to watch this or listen to it, how can they get involved? How can they follow this bout?
So this fight is taking place on Netflix, and I think that the ring walks are expected at 3:30 a.m. UK time, and we will see exactly what happens in that space. It could all be over by 3:35, if I'm totally honest. Actually, let me take that back, because the ring walks will probably take 15 minutes. It could be over by 3:50. So, yeah, take it as you will. But look, this is the space that we're in now. You know that you know, this YouTube space is that crossed over into boxing, and these sort of fights are happening. Whether that's good or bad is, you know, for you to judge. But one thing is a guarantee: everyone will watch it.
Everyone will watch it. Well, yeah, even those, despite it being at 3:30 in the morning, optimistic there, I would say. I'm tempted to watch it. If I have my usual bout of 3:30 a.m. insomnia, I know what to do. I do like a bit of boxing.
Let me tell you this, right? This is going to sound crazy to you, yeah? I think Netflix has 300 million subscribers. There's a lot of interest in this one. Jake Paul has a huge following himself, millions and millions of followers. And Anthony Joshua obviously has that boxing side and has millions of followers as well. This will be the most viewed fight in boxing history.
No, really?
There you go.
I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know whether... I find that kind of slightly sad. I mean, I'm not sort of, you know, a boxing aficionado, far from it, but it sort of makes me sad when you've got proper professional boxers who train and work hard all their lives and compete in the Olympics and put their professions on the line to have some... I mean, I don't really know who Jake Paul is because I live under a rock. If it's not happening in Parliament, I probably don't know about it. But it does sort of make me slightly sad when a sport is sort of... I don't know, do you agree with me? Or are you like, no, this is brilliant, this is great publicity, a fight's a fight, get it on?
Well, listen, I'm sort of one of those guys that looks at it and I go, I don't put it in the boxing space. This falls into the entertainment space. I think that when you're looking at that, yeah, Jake Paul is a boxer and he's done incredibly well to get to where he's got to, but these guys are worlds apart. And I think that this is entertainment / WWE / boxing, all moulded into one, and that's why you're going to attract audiences from all sorts of spaces to watch this one. And it just shows you the changing of the times and the power that Jake Paul has himself to be able to get himself into this position. Like I say, you have to respect it. Love it or hate it, you have to respect it.
Yeah, do you know what? I wonder if we're going to sort of enter an era of having sort of celebrity boxing matches now. Wasn't that guy from Facebook, the one who looks haunted all the time, who looks like he's never progressed beyond the age of 12 and has massive eyes? He was training to beat someone up a while ago. I don't know what's gone on there. You might not know what I'm talking about.
Listen, with the wacky world of boxing and the wild west of boxing at the moment and everyone that wants to be involved in it, you know, I think there's space for anyone.
Well, there you go. Definitely keeps you fit and healthy, that's for sure. It's hard work, a bit of boxing. I did it at my gym at one point, kickboxing as well, and I was like, that is not easy. There's no wonder rounds have to be about 3 minutes long. After about 30 seconds, you can't see.
Exactly. Listen, let's hope that both of these guys come out fit and healthy, and I think that's the main concern here, is that Jake Paul goes in there, puts up a great effort, but comes out fit and healthy. That's the most important thing.
Indeed. Well, it does actually sound kind of bloodthirsty and fun, so I might find myself tuning in later tonight. Spencer, thank you ever so much for keeping us updated on that. Like I said, me being me, a bit of a dark human being around the edges. I like sports that have a degree of danger. You know, it's got to have an element of peril in there. You know, Formula One, ooh, you might just crash that thing. Rugby, ooh, you might just get knocked out in the scrum. Boxing, ooh, you might get KO'd. It is quite tempting, even though I don't know this Jake Paul. Who would you want to have in a sort of fantasy boxing match? Ooh, who would win between Sir Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage? That's an interesting one, because I think Farage would be scrappier, right? Might be a dirtier boxer, but, you know, he's like 50 a day on those Rothmans, whereas Starmer's got quite a bit of bulk to him, doesn't he? Interesting. I think this is what we should do from now on. Let's just sort of take it outside. Let's set up some sort of celebrity boxing programme and, you know, just pit people against each other in the ring. I'd certainly tune in for that. Right, OK, we are going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere. When I come back, we are joined by the brilliant Will Barker, Deputy Head of the News at The Sun, to tell us tomorrow's headlines today. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back and welcome aboard HMS Common Sense, Will Barker. We were just discussing who would win a bout between Starmer and Farage. It's hard to pick.
Yes.
Because, I don't know, like Nigel is scrappier. He's more tenacious, I think.
Definitely see that, yeah.
Although there is a darkness and a determination to Starmer, which shouldn't be underestimated. No. But, you know, it's the 50 a day. And the legacy injuries, you know, falling out of aeroplanes and stuff. Yeah. Whereas Starmer is quite a... He's little, though, isn't he?
He'd sort of know the textbook moves, the sort of the jabbing and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I think Farage would be more like a street fighter and sort of be a bit more dirty.
He'd be good at that. What do they call it? Is it sledging or something before when you're trying to intimidate your partner and sort of, eyeing up and stuff? You know, Nigel would be at this cigarette, he'd just put it out between Starmer's eyes. I'm just imagining it now, my fantasy boxing match. But it was Zuckerberg and Musk, wasn't it, who wanted to have the fight? Where did that go? Bring that back.
Exactly, yeah.
We got hoodwinked into getting, excited about that, and it's just casually disappeared from the agenda.
Yep.
I think someone out there should bring into circulation some sort of celebrity boxing show. Got celebrity everything now. Celebrity Master Chef.
They've done it every so often, isn't it? But it's just something they have to sort of train, and there's a lot of sort of health and safety problems with, isn't there? So
yeah, but that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine who I'd like to see take on, someone else, but
yeah.
Anyway, thoughts on a postcard, please, or indeed you can send it by WhatsApp 03444991000. Who would you like to see fight and why, and who do you think would win? And I'll read out some of those at the end of the programme. Because we don't want to talk about sensible things. It's a Friday. Let's just play fantasy celebrity boxing instead. OK, now let's talk about the headlines tomorrow. David Walliams.
I don't know if you picked this up, but it's just sort of broke this afternoon. In this building, HarperCollins have decided to cut David Walliams adrift. He's been an incredibly successful author for him. He's written 44 books. Wow. He's, I think, one of the biggest kids authors in the country. Made him loads and loads of money, but it's sort of emerged that various staff members have made allegations of improper conduct towards him, and it was an investigation that carried out in 2023, and there's a new CEO just taken over, and he's decided that enough is enough. And sort of
the details of some of this are quite wild. Former staff were told to work in pairs when meeting Williams. I assume two women together, safety in numbers. They were warned against, allegedly, visiting the author at home. Others were kept away from him. I'm sorry, but if you're getting to a stage where you're going, well, we better send two women to that meeting because he's a bit pawsy, gets his mitts on your legs and things like that, why would you not get rid of him sooner?
Well, exactly.
I just don't understand.
Yeah. I think that the fact there's a new CEO, I think, is now sort of that has now drawn a veil on his career there. But he's these are all allegations in the Telegraph today, and there's no sort of response. But it looks pretty bad for Williams.
Well, another one bites the dust, eh? Now, Poison General blitzed. Tell me about this one.
Well, I love all these war stories where they sort of we get increasingly, certainly in the Israeli conflict, where they're sort of using these drones and just getting at people in the middle of strange places. And there is a Russian oil tanker was out in the Med, bizarrely enough, and they sent a drone over and took it out. Turns out on this ship was a top Putin general that was linked to all the Skripal killings, the poisonings in Salisbury back in 2018. He was sort of one of the masterminded behind all of it.
Yeah, because when I read about the story this morning about the sort of shadow fleet being targeted in the Med, like over 1,000 miles away from Ukraine, it's sort of like, well, theatre of war's now moved to the Mediterranean. But I read, no one's thought to be on board. Aha, turns out. And I don't think that's an accident. I'm sure they probably knew he was on board that ship. But it is, the nature of warfare has changed incredibly now with drones.
With the drones, that they can just do it, as you say, remotely from a little place in Ukraine. I mean, they used it great 6 months ago when they did that sort of daring raid into sort of parts of Russia and used all these drones out of nowhere, and they can properly hit the enemy in the sort of nasty places.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I saw this story this morning.
I was extraordinary,
like,
isn't it?
My God.
Yeah.
So this is a story where allegedly, again, it's not allegedly, I think it's true, we know, that a British family took their dead gran onto an EasyJet flight, said, she's just having a nap, don't you worry about her. No, she's had an exhausting day, and 5 of them have to lift her into the plane seat. Yeah. And then before the plane can take off, the air hostess is like, she's dead though, isn't she?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think they were trying to sort of cost-free repatriate the body?
Well, that's sort of the allegation, isn't it? And it sort of looks that way. It's very peculiar, very peculiar. I mean, so they were questioned as they were going onto the plane. Yeah, but the staff were saying, "Is she all right? Is she fine?" And they seemed to be assured that she was. I don't know how.
Did they turn around and say, don't you worry, we're doctors as
sort
well?
of Weekend at Bernie's, they sort of kept them alive somehow or something.
Gosh,
I don't know.
sort of like animating the sort of flaccid limbs. I mean, it's a poor woman, but it's...
So
it's quite staggering.
They maintain that she was just tired initially as she's coming on the onto the plane, but then as they were taxiing for takeoff, somebody alerted that she was in fact she had passed away.
Gosh, there was another story just the other day, actually, about someone managing to board a flight, and I can't remember which. I think it might be in a budget airline, without a ticket, without a passport, just got on the plane.
Yeah. As one of the passengers say, you can't get on the plane if you're too drunk, but if you're too dead, then that's fine.
It's absolutely extraordinary. One does assume... Oh, here you go. You've got it in your copy. The cost of repatriating a body from Spain is £4,500, which is a dance like more expensive, one assumes, than an EasyJet ticket.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's sort of like, you know, can you imagine having that discussion around the dinner table? You're all in Spain, you've gone to see your mum or whatever who lives out there. I don't know what the circumstances are. And all of a sudden she kicks the bucket and it's like, oh my gosh, has anyone got the insurance to cover that? Does their health insurance cover that? And you can sort of almost imagine the conversation happening over a bit of tapas and a sort of, you know, vat of sangria where, you know, someone goes, we could just take her on the plane home with us, could just, like, you know, stick her favourite hat on and push her about in the wheelchair. She kind of looks like that anyway. I don't know. It is a sort of a kind of ghoulish but kind of,
It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Fascinating is what we're going to go with. Oh dear.
I know, yeah.
This is not good news. In fact, this is the worst news that I've heard in a long time, this last story. Go on, break it to me gently.
So it appears that with Noel and Liam and the Oasis reunion over the summer, their haircuts have now come back into fashion. It's a bit of a tricky subject for me, obviously, but the sort of mod style, mop sort of haircuts from back in the 90s are now all the rage again, according to hairdressers.
Eek. I mean, actually, the 90s have made a big comeback. When you look, I see things in terms of fashion, and people are starting to do... I mean, in the 90s, there's this really niche fashion for a short period of time where people wore a skirt over trousers. And that seems to be creeping back. The very sort of tiny little metal framed sunglasses, they're back. I mean, the 90s were a great decade, to be fair. But the 90s hairstyles, I suppose that, at the time, they were being accused of copying the 60s, weren't they? So maybe these things just have like a 30-year automatic cycle.
Around in cycles, yeah.
But something that hasn't ever come back in the 30-year automatic cycle, thank goodness, is the sort of glam rock perm.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, that was a weird thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's a decade in which women seemingly found men attractive when they had hair like Charles II. And it's like, really?
It's the big boof on.
Yeah, and men in makeup. I mean, thankfully that didn't come back really either. But there you go. So, everyone's asking for this shaggy mop.
Yeah.
Oh well, great. Can't wait when I go back out dating to meet all these little Gallagher lookalikes. Brilliant stories once again, Will. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Right, OK, we are going to be taking a short break now, but when I come back after the break, it is the last opportunity to let me know your thoughts on anything we've been talking about today. Also, I'd love to speak to some of you about, our fantasy boxing matches. Who would you pitch against the other? Who would win? I'm still undecided about Farage versus Starmer, I'm going to have to go with my boy Nigel because of loyalty and because he's scrappy, but I don't know. It's a tough one, that. I actually don't know. It'd be hard to call. I'd definitely turn up and watch it, though. Who would you like to see punch the living daylights out of it? No. Have a sensible, regulated and gentlemanly boxing match with somebody else under the eyes of a watchful and keen audience. Who would you pit against the other, and who do you think would win? Let me know. 03444991000 is the number to call. You can also send me a WhatsApp on that number. It's your normal network rate. 87222 is the number if you'd rather. Send me a text message. If you're going to be old school and send me an SMS, then you have to do the extra little bit of work of writing the word talk before your message. OK, last opportunity. So pick up the blower, get at it, and I'll chat with some of you just after this.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. You know, his WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy.
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Let's go straight to the phone lines and catch up with Lisa, who's in Cardiff. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Alex. I've spoken to lots of your colleagues and lovely to speak to you. Fabulous as always.
Oh, lovely to speak to you as well, my darling. Now, what do you want to speak about, though?
I tell you what, it was nice I was delayed for 10 minutes because I had the joy, in inverted commas, of watching on my phone Sir Keir Starmer on Loose Women yesterday. Right, now, no disrespect to Loose Women, but it's not a programme I'd watch. He is completely out of his... He's elephant in the room. I know... I thought we're broke. We've got $1 billion he's spending now for this misogynistic, and I understand that. I thought we're broke. Right, we're broke, aren't we?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're definitely broke. I'm broke, you're broke, we're all broke because they keep coming back for more, don't they?
I've just come in from work. So anyway, what I wanted to say, I missed Kirsty earlier, talking about in Nottingham, Kirsty. She doesn't have there's no sort of problem of migrants in Nottingham. Well, that's marvellous. I think it's marvellous that there's no problems for Kirsty, but that's the massive problem for most of the British public. Right?
Oh, it is, yeah. And I'd imagine there'd be plenty of people in Nottingham who said, you know, pull the other one. There definitely is a problem in these parts.
What really irked me, tax the rich more. Right? They're leaving in their droves.
Yeah. Oh, so the rich is us now, basically. You know, it's any old Tom, Dick and Harry who actually goes out and works. You're rich.
I'm self-employed, right? I'm paying my taxes twice a year, and she's saying tax the rich more.
Well, I'm afraid that's Labour for you. Living in Cardiff, you should know that. You've been governed by those lot and a sort of one-party state since devolution was invented.
Well, we didn't vote for devolution because we're sensible, right? We're 56 and 57, right? We've seen many governments, right? It's absolutely hell in Wales. But Starmer, let's get him out. How can we get him out?
I love this. Well, I don't know. Let's try and organise this boxing match of Nigel Farage. Let's get Nigel trained up and let's see what happens.
You know, we're signed up. We've never joined the party. We're signed up for reform. You know, we're paid up, right? We've got to evoke change. Something has to happen, and thank God for
Well, at the moment, you're still set to have Welsh Assembly elections next year, but we have to sort of put that under a sort of maybe they won't happen clause given this government.
I don't think that'll happen because Labour are scared.
They won't. They can't cancel the Assembly elections, the Senedd elections. Sorry, that'd be crazy.
Well, you never know. You know, he might bring some sort of ruling in. You know, but Alex, and thank you to all of you for you know, flying the flag and speaking.
Oh, it is our pleasure, my darling. Where in Cardiff are you?
Just outside, but
whereabouts?
Craiger.
Oh, okay, I know Craiger. Yeah, I've lived in Cardiff a lot. I did my journalism school in Cardiff, then worked for BBC Wales, ITV Wales. I've lived in Cardiff 5 times. I've lived in Cardiff like a boomerang.
And all around the world.
And all around the world, but yeah,
we love catching up with you with all the places you've lived. All right, but Alex and all of you, and a very Merry Christmas and all the best.
What's it in Welsh? Merry Christmas.
Oh, God, no. Nadolig Llawen.
That's it, Nadolig Llawen. That's right.
Llawen.
Yes. See, all those times in Wales and I never really picked up the language, or it doesn't have any vowels, so you can't really blame me. They like the niche letters over in Wales. Lisa, thank you ever so much. The glorious Lisa, who is in Cardiff. Let's speak to Jack, who's in Kent. Hi, Jack.
Hello, Alex. I'm a bit nervous talking to you. I don't know how to address you. I mean, I know Julia is Her Excellency, isn't she?
Ooh.
I think of you as your exuberance.
I like that, your exuberance. Ooh, I'm going to get that on some sort of little name badge. In fact, I might demand that they change the sort of signage on the bottom of the screen. So when I pop up, instead of saying Alex Phillips, it says Her Exuberance, Alex Phillips.
And listen, when I finished when I rang up about, I want to be a bit of a pedant with you about a particular word.
Oh.
But anyway, do you remember Margaret Thatcher quoting St Francis of Assisi?
I don't remember Margaret Thatcher quoting St Francis of Assisi, but I know who St Francis of Assisi is. In fact, I consider him my favourite saint.
Is he? Well, do you know, I mean, I doubt whether she knew this, but he thought that poverty is a good thing.
Well, yes, he was an extremely pious, ascetic man, wasn't he? Who liked to hang out with animals mainly.
Well, yes, animals as well as people suffering from leprosy. But he gave everything away, including the clothes he was standing up in, and just walked off.
Wow.
And a friendly bishop gave him a cloak, I think, and that's true. So, I mean, there are a lot of contradictions in the Bible. I mean, that's one of them. Because you remember Christ also, when the rich young man went to him and asked him what he should do to attain the kingdom of heaven, he said, well, give all your possessions away, give them to the poor.
Yes, because camel through eye of the needle, etc.
Thereby rendering himself poor, you know.
Well, I think it's sort of more like, you know, my vicars, when we speak about give us this day our daily bread, my vicar sort of suggested that it's unto them what they need in order to do their service.
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, whenever I go into the supermarket and I'm surrounded by all these goodies, food aplenty, I always feel a bit guilty. I don't know about you. Do you feel like that, Emma?
Not really, no, I don't really feel guilty. But I must admit, I do, you know, I don't know, I'm talking about what I do in my private time with my money, but I do make sure that I give to my church, who do all sorts of brilliant things in the community, and also other things that I think are vitally important. So Air Ambulance. I'm amazed that Air Ambulance is a charity, but, you know, we desperately need those choppers in the sky to save lives. And so I'm not particularly a materialistic person, Jack. I don't care. I'm one of these rare women that I don't wear jewellery, so don't bother buying me anything with diamonds in. I don't give a hoot about handbags. If you could see under the desk, you'd see I definitely don't give a hoot about shoes either. In fact, the only thing I do give a hoot about is buying half decent food, because I like to buy straight from farmers, because I actually want to support farmers. But I'm not really much of a materialist, if I'm honest with you. I could live with almost nothing. Happy enough just standing in a field, me. Quite simple.
Charity originally meant love, didn't it? Love, hope, faith, hope and charity, is it?
Yeah, faith, hope and charity.
It meant love originally, but it came to mean the giving of alms, because obviously if you love somebody, you want to help them out, including financially. But that reminds me of that thing that Rowan Williams said when he was in situ as the Archbishop. He suggested that people, or rich people, or at least rich companies, should be compelled by law to give to charity.
Well, I don't know. We might want to check the bit in the Bible where it says render unto Caesar what is Caesar's when it comes to taxation. But definitely the Bible does encourage those with means to voluntarily give to those without. So it's an understandably important sentiment in Christianity. And I must say, Make Me a Channel of Your Peace, the hymn of St Francis, is one of my all-time favourite hymns. So thank you for bringing him up. Jack, I'm going to let you go now, but thank you ever so much. Always like a bit of a Bible chat, me. Let's speak now. He's a regular. We love him. It is the brilliant and eloquent Tarquin in London. Hi, Tarquin.
My darling, I have a special treat for you.
Oh, brilliant.
Something you mentioned earlier on where said you were in tears made me think, oh, my Lord, I think I could possibly do this for the girl. I am doing an exclusive on Talk, especially for Alex, a rendition of Oh, Come All Ye Faithful. And I want everybody singing in Radioland to join in with me and Alex. Alex, you know verse 2, Oh, Sing Choirs of Angels.
Oh, no, you're going to make me do the descant bit?
Well, yes, well, exactly. You've got to do that bit. I'll do the first verse, and let's just take it from the top.
I don't know about this. I want to keep my job in the new year. I mean, I was just saying, I'm giving to church, I'm giving to Air Ambulance. I'll be the one needing the charity checks if I start singing on air, Tarquin. You don't know what you're unleashing on the population.
Right, are you ready? Here we go.
No, don't make me do it, Tarquin. And actually, you there, Kieran, you knew what you were getting me into. If I didn't have a train to catch at 7:36, you would be in big trouble, my friend. My fantasy boxing ring now involves you, me, and a team of people like they have in that film Anchorman, who are all going to tear you to pieces, young man. Carry on, Tarquin. I will let you begin.
Dear beloved, we are gathered here today at Talk Towers to sing to Alex before Christmas her most favourite Christmas carol. Join in, everybody. It goes as follows. Oh, come on, ye faithful.
Oh, look, Kev's in the studio. Brilliant. You can join in, Kev.
Oh, come, jingle, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of Angels. So come.
Oh, come, let us adore him.
Or as we used to sing at school, oh, come, let us explore him. And the teachers always used to get annoyed with us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go. How to ruin a beautiful Christian moment. Thank you, Tarquin, by the way. In fact, no.
Oh, is that Tarquin?
Yeah, that was
would
Tarquin.
be. Yeah,
that was Tarquin
be, yeah.
setting me up. I mean, I don't mind. The thing, have you noticed, like, I'm not a terrible singer. I wouldn't be about to put me on stage. I can just about hold a note.
Hold a tune, yeah.
But there's something about Christmas carols that they feel like they have to use every single note in every octave.
Do you know what makes...
Like, it goes from up there to down there, like, hark the herald angels sing. You start off singing in this key, and then you're like, oh, I'm not going to get up there, am I?
You know what was always funny? I remember at school assemblies, and it happens in churches as well, they have the choir, and they go, hark the herald angels sing. But then at a certain point, the choir goes off into a descant going, and at school, the whole school would go with them, only not very well.
Oh, yeah.
And it happens in churches
It
as
always
well.
does, yeah. You kind of like want to start singing the harmonies because they're jazzier and better.
Yeah, don't descant because the crowd will go with you.
I descant in the car all the time. I love a descant in the car.
Yeah.
I always challenge myself. Well, I'm not actually that musical. One of my favourite challenges is putting on a record that I'm going to try and sing the harmonies to when no one can hear me trying to make that attempt.
Yeah, in space, no one can hear you scream. That's like
Exactly. Exactly. Where's your person gone?
My little friend Josh.
Where's Mini Kev?
He's with his parents down for London for the weekend, and they're going